Welcome back, everyone, to Lesser Known Operators. I'm your host, Nicholas Allen, and my guest today is Chris Cathers, a Green Beret from the 3rd Special Forces Group. Got out, went to PA school, did some time as a GRS operator, and now has founded the Brothers Keeper Veteran Foundation and is doing everything he can to raise money for veteran programs in the time that he has left, and is currently battling stage 4 bone cancer. So, check him out. I will have links to his socials in the show description. Today's episode is brought to you by the Precision Wellness Group and Dr. Taylor Bosley. Precision Wellness Group helps you restore balance, unlock vitality through bioidentical hormone therapy and evidence-based, personalized telemedicine. Dr. Taylor Bosley is a board-certified physician, a U.S. Army veteran, and a former Green Beret. Dr. Taylor Bosley has the shared background, so he understands where you've been, where you want to go, and how to get you there. And a bonus, he's an actual doctor who can prescribe you actual medicine. If hormone replacement therapy, TRT, peptides, if this is something you've been thinking about for a while now or just looking into, look no further than Precision Wellness Group. They will point you in the right direction. I will have links to their website and socials in the show description, along with Chris Cathers and Brothers Keeper Veteran Foundation. I do appreciate you guys. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, comment, pass these episodes along. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. Chris Cathers, welcome to Lesser Known Operators, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
What's going on, brother? Appreciate you having me on.
Fuck yeah, I've been looking forward to it ever since we had our little meet and greet on the phone. You are up and coming in trying to do as much damage as you can in a short amount of time, and I'm all about it. I'd love to see it. I'm in the same boat, fully committed, all in to a psychotic level. I think I'm at right now. I don't know about you.
Hey, man, that's why I got the shirt on. Fueled by pain, driven by purpose. Right? It's kind of a reminder, man. Time's short. You never know how much you got. So, like, my perspective is you got to get after it once you develop a plan and kind of whether that's business or whatever that you're passionate about. Then you just got to execute and get after it. So and be relentless. That's what I think we're hardwired that way a little bit, huh?
Yeah, we are. We drift away from that as soon as something kind of major goes wrong. We just got to remember that the hard shit's easy. We just got to keep doing the hard shit, and then things get easier. The anxiety and the stress starts to eat at us because we're not doing that hard shit anymore. We're not making things challenging enough for ourselves, I think. I don't know what you think.
Well, that's why I always pick the most insane jobs. Even running a veteran nonprofit sounds really benign and easy, but developing an organization from an idea to concept to execution and then actually seeing the fruits of labor is super cool. But yeah, you just gotta be driven, and I live in that uncomfortable space, and I try to encourage people to live in if you have a growth mindset, you got to do hard things, man. If you want to get better, you got to suffer. You got to pay your dues. You got to live in that uncomfortable zone. And the lessons you learn when you're uncomfortable are extremely valuable if you pay attention to that. Unfortunately, a lot of people they really focus on the negative energy and the naysayer that's in their living in their body, and then they might stop that pursuit. So you gotta stay focused on that and live in that uncomfortable space. That's where the biggest growth and potential that you have comes about. If you just sit back on your laurels eating chips every day, playing video games, it's only going to get you so far in life. Maybe you're the best gamer, but outside of that, there's going to be consequences. You gotta really be focused. So on what's important.
Yeah. And, uncomfortable, right? You're you're putting yourself in some pretty uncomfortable situations, starting a veteran nonprofit. And it's fucking difficult. Like this shit isn't easy. Especially with social media. You only see the finished, polished product oftentimes, but not the 20 hours a day it takes to make all that stuff and get it put out there. And then your story, one thing you said when we met each other, was like you were going to meet with Nick and do a workout, and you just finished that up recently. And you were talking to him, and he's like, fuck yeah, I want to work out with you. You motivate me. That's just like just that little bit you said there was like stuck in my head. Oh, that motivates. These two guys are getting it in. I can work harder. I can get it
Yeah,
in.
and
We
I've
get to
met
that.
Nick several times, man. Like last year, he spoke for us. We had the pleasure of having him as a keynote twice, man. Once in Augusta and once at our big gala in September, and he just crushed it, man. And it wasn't an egotistical based keynote speech. The reason I like dudes like that, he's overcome adversity at the most extreme level and has been a good steward for the special operations community. Just the world is as a whole. That's why he is successful, because he grinds, he knows what he wants, and he works damn hard on achieving it. But yeah, when he offered up, like, even though it was an active recovery day, and I just came off of MRSA for like a month, on antibiotics, I dropped about 15 pounds that I worked really hard to put on. But I was like, fuck yeah, I want to work out. You're 6'6", 260. Like, I'm going to keep pestering him, because I like to surround myself with strong men that are good examples of different disciplines in life and grit and resiliency. He's another guy that, if you surround yourself with those circles, it does nothing but elevate your game than if you're like the big fish in a small pond. So I just like to learn off of different people, even though he's younger than me. He's got a lot of things he can teach me, guys like that. So yeah, that's one of the rewards of working in this space is, you find these exceptional and extraordinary people, especially the people that speak at some of our events, like Medal of Honor recipients. I'm like, you guys are my heroes, dude. Like, real life heroes. And so they all have something to give, when it comes to educating yourself.
Fuck yeah. That's what my whole thing is about. Like, to some extent, everyone is lesser known to someone. Um, and I kind of want to, spread awareness, hear everybody's story and what everybody's got going on. Like, very good chance that most of my listeners have never heard of you. I only got introduced to you in the comment section of YouTube. And so I think somebody that works for you said you should look up Chris Cathers, and okay, done. And I sent you a message that night. Hey, we should get to know each other. And now here we are. And now this whole connection thing, but it's an active, you have to actively do it. Like, you can't just sit and wait for shit to happen because everybody's so fucking busy.
Yep.
And if
Got to
you match
manifest.
their busyness, you can work together. But if you're not, if you know, I want to say like performing at the same level, but if you're not actively, and it seems, it feels weird, but if you're not forcing yourself into some sort of limelight or notoriety, then nobody's gonna. They're just gonna pass you by. They're not gonna see you. And it feels weird talking to your phone and doing all these products and reaching out to people. Like, you don't feel like you're at the same level they are, but we're all just regular fucking guys that do crazy shit. Like, I was fucking born on a cornfield, I lived raised on a cornfield in Illinois, in the middle of fucking nowhere. Like, just a normal person growing up in a normal nowhere town that nobody's ever heard of. And we go out and do extraordinary shit. And everybody else can do extraordinary shit too, but you got to go fucking do it. You have to go actively try to do it.
Yeah, and it's what you do when you fail that defines you as well. People never talk about that. It's kind of like what you just keyed on. There's a lot of trials and tribulations, and my goal is, obviously, I'm singularly focused on, one thing, making as big impact as humanly possible. Because the bigger my span of control gets for the organization, even myself as a representative, that makes our job so much easier. And that's the more lives we can impact. So that's where the genesis was. I hate doing social media. I think I've done 5 podcasts in the last 28 days. And like, I don't get any enjoyment out of it other than kind of getting the word out there, raising awareness, destigmatizing veterans' mental health through my story, and, trying to influence people to get better, to really maximize what they've got. And I try to tell everybody, man, be your own success story, be your own turnaround situation. What I love growing up, man, I grew up near Philly, and I grew up with Sylvester Stallone in Rocky, one of my favorite movies as a kid. And then, of course, like Rambo, a little cheesy now in hindsight, right? As what we know. But
So
the
cheesy.
those 80s movies, dude, like, the workout montages, and, it's all about this little guy trying to overcome, and you fall on your face like 20 times, like the movie Rudy and all these like inspirational sports movies. It always comes out because that's how you demonstrate your human spirit. It's like, this shit never comes easy for those kind of guys. Steve Prefontaine, one of the, a runner that was trying to break the 4 minute mile. And I was a runner. So I'd watch those movies and they're like, you're not big enough. You're not strong enough. Everybody's shitting on him. And then all of a sudden he qualifies for the Olympics, and it's like, I'm trying to encourage people to be your own success story, man. Like Rogan had a little montage about live your life like you're living a documentary. And, that's one of the things that I was, directly opposed to when I started this. I was super private. I had no online signature at all. And I chose to be that way because of my lifestyle and the work that I did. And then all of a sudden I'm like in front of like, you know, doing podcasts. And we're doing a documentary right now that the Hulu and Netflix is looking at, which would be really big for the company. But personally, I don't profit from it. Nothing but people trying to like look behind the veil and show like the ugly side, the demons that I fought. And it's not something that I really want to do, but if I can save just one life by putting something out there or creating an organization that we've already saved hundreds of lives, dude, that motivates the fuck out of me, man. I love every bit of it. And I'm going to continue to do this until I can no longer function. And trust me, when I know what I'm saying, when I say that, I've had a lot of time to think about it. And that just keeps me plugged in, man. People need to have a purpose other than just, you're paying your bills. You need to, there's something innately in what interwoven into our DNA that, the hunter gatherers, everybody had their singular focus. It was like men would do this, women would do that. And over time, those roles got kind of broken down. And then I think a lot of men get transitioning out of the military, go from such an extreme being a combat veteran, under the most insane circumstances. Then they get out and they're like working at Home Depot and they're like, holy cultural shift, man. Like I'm getting yelled at by an 18-year-old. And it actually happened to a buddy of mine who got out as an E7. He transitioned out and he was literally working at Home Depot for an 18-year-old. And he's just like, bro, I just came back from Afghanistan. Like, I'm about ready to lose my mind. What gets you killed keeps you alive in combat gets you killed as a civilian, and vice versa. So it's really a big challenge for veterans. And we're helping a lot of people with that through our work.
Yeah, there's no. I spoke to Friday night. Yeah, no, Saturday night. I got that news about Sergeant Major Miller, and so we went out. The whole team the SF team I was working with, went out in Fort McCoy, and I talked to him, and I said, guys, this is all going to end for you someday. You're going to stop putting the uniform on, and you're going to go do other stuff, and it's different because you're National Guard, but it's going to end. And there's nothing I can say that is going to prepare you for that. There's no words or anything that can prepare you from going from this environment of all these guys sitting around this table, this feeling of being together and just joking and everybody being on the same high level of performance, to going to work
Yeah, it's like
somewhere that
losing
you
your
don't like.
family. But there are
Yeah.
steps you can take. Like one, I tell people, man, I know one guy who's a former Green Beret. His name's Trevor Beeman. He's down in Key
Yeah. I
West
think
running
I've
the
been
dive
messaging him.
program. Yeah, super nice guy, dude. Went through some crazy stuff. He spoke for us as well several years ago. We've been good friends since, and he went through some really crazy childhood trauma, very extreme, and joined the military to essentially commit suicide after 9/11, and had a lot of addiction issues, morphine, sneaking stuff, obviously he went to drugs and alcohol treatment twice while he was in SF, still in, thank God. And he's been
I think he
planning
just
for
got
3
out.
years,
Yeah.
you know, but you have to make that plan. If you start working to a plan, you either have a plan or you end up working for somebody who does, right? So if you start planning the transition out and identifying that purpose and what you're really passionate about, the money will come, you know. And you also need that support network. Like, who's your tribe going to be? Maybe that's your spouse, or some of your friends that are already successfully transitioned. So you need that support network. You need that plan, and that does make the transition go a little bit easier because you're expecting it to be hard. Because mine was just like, hey, you sure? I was up for my third reenlistment, and I talked to my team sergeant about it. The op tempo wasn't what it quickly became. I made the biggest mistake getting out ever at the time. Didn't know, and my coaching was, hey, are you sure you don't want to reenlist one more time? I said, yeah, I'm sure. They're like, all right, have a good one. I had no packet, no paperwork. It was like 2, 3 weeks later or whatever. As I transitioned out, I was literally on my own, and there was no ties back to the community where I just left. I was like, holy shit. And I know it's different now. There's a lot more support, but not nearly enough.
There's a lot more support. It can feel like too much at times, especially with the regular Army stuff that they stack on there. SF is doing a great job of providing effective support, especially now with this new thing I've heard out of first group where guys are coming out of how do I say it, like productive roles a year out from retirement or a year out from ETS, and they're going to their internships or transition programs, starting school, starting new careers and things like that. So yeah, there's a lot of shit out there. But you said, I want to make an impact, and we got Brothers Keeper Veteran Foundation. What did it start out as the impact you want to make, and now where do you want it to go?
Well, I'd have to start with the genesis of, what got me started in it. It's hard to tell you that without, it's like, why did you end up,
Yeah.
starting the organization? But, so out of high school, went in the military, didn't have a lot of good options at the time because I was getting in a lot of trouble, and I needed a kick in the ass, and I was aware of it, but I was very stubborn, teenager. So anyway, I joined the military, went through, I went in as a non-combat MOS simply because I didn't know how to ask the right questions with the recruiter, and they just needed a warm body, and they got one. So I enlisted for 6 years, and I was of all things, I started in aviation, working on attack helicopters or Apaches. And I was like, until I graduated basic training, I was so naive. I didn't know where I was going until they started calling us out, where you're getting assigned, what your MOS was. I was that dumb. And, I was like, I'm in aviation. Like, I told him I want to be airborne ranger, and didn't even know exactly what that entailed. That was I meaning battalion. So anyway, that was my I got screwed by a recruiter story. So I tried out for group as an E4, went through it physically. That was never a challenge. It was more, I felt very behind compared to my counterparts, like guys coming from, combat MOSs, 11 Bravo, Ranger Battalion, guys that were older. I was only like 25, I think. I was super young, at least for us at the time. And so anyway, I went through that. Then, I went to physician's assistant school because, they were, they were telling me I was too stupid to be a medic, which was pretty much an accurate statement. So I'm like, I'll show you guys. I'll go get my PA degree. And while I was in college, that's when 9/11 occurred. And I started calling that day, called my team sergeant up. I was like, I want to get back in. Like, I fucked up. And the pipeline at the time just seemed very long and extensive to get back in. And he kind of was telling me like, hey, Panama, Grenada, the first Gulf War, all these things were over very quickly. By the time you get back in, it's probably going to be over. Now we fast forward 22 years later, right? So, anyway, I went in, I went to Iraq in '03. I did several deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, Israel, and then with ODAs, North Africa. And, went through pretty crazy shit because it was the Wild West. You didn't know what to expect when you first, the gate comes down on the aircraft, and like you get hit by that heat wave, and you have no one's ever done it before, as a contractor, prior to this. And anyway, I successfully transitioned out because I didn't think the war was going to continue for as long as it did, or I certainly would have stayed in my prime. And I was like, what am I going to do? I've just been gunslinging my whole career. Like, where, like, how's that going to translate? So, even though I only had 5 classes left with PA, I decided to get my business degree. I got pulled in and invested in an armored vehicle company, and we quickly expanded with 4 Neanderthals. My buddy John, who was a SEAL, he was my partner in Iraq. He was the CEO. My buddy Ron, he was a founder. And so we had that camaraderie. That's why I was able to successfully transition, because these guys, I literally worked with them in Iraq and Afghanistan. And my buddy Ron, I went through group with. So in 4 years, we sold the company for $35 million. And then the bottom fell out. My buddy John died. His wife was 9 months pregnant, had to knock on her door. It's a very long story, but for brevity's sake, I went through a divorce. I had a lot of things financially. I was really set. I was planning to retire before 40, and I was on pace for that, and had 12 properties. I invested all my money, and my wife divorced me. My buddy's dead. Um, he was my next door neighbor, my CEO, also my partner. And it was that was when I started really drinking hard. And I quit my job because the private equity company ended up, after 8 months, I said, "Are you going to pay him?" We had very large life insurance policies. His was $3 million. And he had 2 children, 2 daughters, very young, I think 5 and 7 at the time, and his first boy that he never met. And I'm like, "Are they good?" And they said yes. But at the end of the day, they said, "Tell his wife to sue the organization for the life insurance that was clearly, in my opinion, marked for him." And I said, I quit. I resigned on the spot. So I had no job, no friend. My wife divorced me. It was a fucking country music song. Started drinking. I'm like, well, what am I going to do now? I have a, 6,500 square foot house with all this obligations. Like, I got to, make this much money. So anyway, I just kind of went off the reservation for 6 months. I ran 2 more organizations, but for 13 years before I was diagnosed with cancer in 19, which I'll get into, I was outwardly successful, but I was having panic attacks at work. I was super isolated. I didn't hang out with anybody for 13 years other than like 1 or 2 people. I don't, wouldn't leave the house. And I just was super uncomfortable being around anybody, let alone a room full of people, even if they were my subordinates. So I'd have to go home from work 2 times a day to change my suit. I would sweat through it for no reason in my head. And so when I was diagnosed with cancer in 19, I got back into executive protection for the last 5 years of my career, because I was like, I kept up with my craft. I was training all the time. I was like 230 pounds, really fit, doing jujitsu. And the reason I say that is because I didn't see this one coming, because I've always dieted my whole life. I've been very disciplined. And all of a sudden they're like, I had a little pain in my hip. I go to the doctor. They misdiagnosed me. But because so many of my friends have died from strange ailments, I decided to get a second opinion, which ultimately saved my life the first time. And, after 5 days in the hospital, they just gave me antibiotics. They're like, "You have a bone infection. You're good." I'm like, "A bone infection?" I'm like, at the time, like 45 years old. I was like, that's something old people get. Like, I don't get it. So anyway, I got a second opinion. They said, biopsy came back in a week. They did a bone graft, and repaired my upper femoral head, which was ready to break, which I would have been an amputee at the hip, and had to get my femur removed, my hip, my glute, my quad on the second surgery, like a couple weeks later, learn how to walk again. And about that time, I was in this weird position where I was praying to die every day, like about 100 days a year, I would fucking try to, act, try to pull the trigger. I'd have a gun in my mouth literally about 100 times a year at the worst times. And it just got to a point I was trying to figure out, why should I be here? I'm just rehabbing. So I wanted to get help for myself, and I didn't know where to start. So very convoluted answer to your question. That was kind of the background. And I said, man, I call myself a professional sufferer, because I feel like I go through pain with a smile on my face. Like, I'm pretty accustomed to it. I live in pain every day, hence the shirt. But the purpose is so important. That makes the pain easy, right? So, and I'll put it in perspective for the audience. Like, of all the things being blown up, life or death situations, um, I was born having a tracheotomy because I couldn't breathe. Like, there was a lot of times where I came close to dying, but never really thought that I could, because I was so, when you're young, you're naive. You're like, I'm invincible, motherfucker. And even with cancer, I was like, well, I don't want this thing to beat me. But on the other hand, I'm, I'm ready to fucking die now. But I didn't want to do that to my wife and my stepson. So I decided to get help. I started Google searching. I went to the VA trauma recovery group. I did drugs and alcohol treatment through the VA, and I was high almost every time. They're like, how you doing? I'm like, this is virtual. Like, I'm high as fuck. So I'm doing great right now until I run out of drugs or alcohol. And nothing seemed to work. So I started leaning on nonprofits, which I didn't believe in. And that's one of the reasons I don't take a salary as a founder of the company, was because there was one or two organizations that did things improperly, and it really jaded me to get help. And I thought it was kind of hippie shit. It's like, I don't know, man, I can figure this out. But I got so tired. I told, my last suicide attempt, I think it was in 2022. And that one scared me because there was no warning signs. Like, usually it was like my anxiety would ramp up, depression, and then ideation. So that's why I started the company. But I wanted to, what we do that's differently is I wanted to be able to handhold the veterans through their care and find what resonates with them, because there's not a one size fits all approach to veterans mental health. If that was the case, there would be one solution. I like to say big pharma would monetize it. Everybody would go to that institution, right? But you're dealing with TBIs, you're dealing with PTS, addictions. It's a complex mental health situation. So a lot of veterans need multiple different modes of or different modalities to get to the answer. And the whole goal is to have people unpack what ails them. What is the driving indicator that's leading you to these thoughts that are intrusive? And all these tools are just there to get to that answer. And I wanted to have faith-based, programs, even though that wasn't what really resonated with me at the time. I wanted something for everybody. So what we do is we assess veterans clinically, and then we connect them with the proper treatment or modality, and then they come back to us. We reassess, and maybe they're an amputee. They need help with that. So we move from, basically, for triage, to keep this simple and wrap it up, is you have survive, stabilize, and thrive. So a lot of veterans come, it's survive, they're hanging on by a thread. They have ideation, addictions. They need really fast and responsive help. And then our goal is to stabilize them, get them different care. Maybe it's financial. And people go back and forth in categories a little bit, but the goal is eventually to get them to thrive, rebuild their marriages, do a couples retreat. And, if they can't afford to go on a hunting trip, for instance, but they put years of work in, like, we want to reward those people with positive things they might not be able to afford to do anymore. So it's kind of it's a long process for some people, and some people do one thing and then they're good to go. Everybody's different because, we grow up in different environments. Some people are from the city, some are from they're living in the hood, and then you have another person who lives in the country, maybe like where you came from, it's like cornfields and shit. And they're like, there's that developmental cycle. Your tribe is so different. So we're trying to find something that resonates with the individual. And it's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. I wasn't planning on running a nonprofit, but based on my experience, I said, man, if I can't, I started having friends that commit suicide, and I started losing more and more people. And I said, dude, if I can just save one or two lives, this is totally worth it. And, you know, I'm terminally ill right now. And my goal from the beginning, I said, look, I just want to build the organization. I have a fire under my ass to grow it because I want to see it, selfishly. I want to see that baby, starting a business. You have an infant that never sleeps at night, and then you want to get it to an adult. And we're like past the infancy stage where the baby's getting some sleep, which makes my life a little bit easier. But the bigger the organization, the more impact. And just this year, we went from 36 veterans starting off in January. We're right now on the 25th of this month, we have nearly 100 in our care. So the first quarter was 165% growth on people coming to us. What I need, from people is just the support, maybe volunteering, getting involved, sharing us on social media. Everything like that matters. It doesn't cost you a dime. And if people have businesses that they know, that's how we have this balance of like clinical, and then clinical growth strategy. And then we also have to balance that with the prerequisite, which of course is funding. But Anyway, yeah, that's kind of a very long answer to your question, but I was kind of driven from my own experience, and I was like, man, stage 4 cancer and knowing I could die in a month or a year, it's a crapshoot. I could live with that all day, but when you're suffering and being tormented, what I call demons, um, it's literally the worst thing I've ever felt. I'll take all the pain in the world that I'm going through now to be rid of that bullshit. And I know there's a solution because it worked for me. So I'm just trying to let people know, hey, if it could work for me, man, it did take me a long time, but I didn't have somebody hand holding. I was throwing spaghetti at the wall 5 hours a day for 3 years. While I was starting the company, I was investing in my brain and myself, to get better. And long as you're willing to put the work in, you'll get better.
Yeah. Um, there's a lot of steps you got to take to have a clear enough mind to realize that you need to put the work in, right? You said guys are going through a lot of different things. And one to add in there is when I talked to the sponsor of my show, Dr. Taylor Bosley, he goes, all of this shit could just be a testosterone imbalance. Like, could be. I'm not saying it is, but you start fixing guys' hormones and they go, well, fuck, I feel great. Well,
That's definitely
you've
a
been
thing.
going through this for 5 years and all we had to do was stick you in the ass with a needle. Like,
I'm a big
fuck.
dude. Testosterone levels in a lot of operators are very freaking low. And to your point, your endocrine system has a massive impact on your mental well-being and your physical well-being. So, yeah, I mean, the PSA for your audience is like, look, if you're in the military, please get a annual routine checkup, get your blood work done, go through all that, get your testosterone looked at. And that's something simple, man, but you might catch something like cancer because veterans are more likely to get cancer than their counterparts. And I always throw colon cancer because it's the easy 50-50. But if you're just in the military, you're 50% more likely to get colon cancer just with that one thing. And that
Yeah,
kind
we
of
can't,
spotlight
yeah,
on it.
we can't live in like fear of that. That was the gig. Like we signed up and now there's nothing we can do about those choices. Everybody's getting something. It's just but there's some of those old studies of that in people's minds, right? Of like, uh, testosterone leads to, colon cancer or other things. That doesn't apply to hormone replacement therapy and things like
No,
that. Whatever
it's
you
your normal
think you
level.
know, yeah, whatever you think talk to a doctor. That's why I was so happy when uh, Taylor's like, "Hey, can I sponsor your show?" I was like, "Absolutely." And when he explained it to me, I was like, "You're doing so much more for dudes' mental health than a lot of these other programs are because you're actually fucking fixing their chemical shit in their brain."
You
So,
sleep better,
yeah,
number one. That's huge because a lot of us don't sleep well. And so your sleep's better. Your sexual performance is always going to be better, as long as you're doing TRT and you're doing it properly. If you get your blood work, you're actually less likely to have something pop up because you're getting that done several times a year, where they're looking at all your different markers and indicators, so your PSA, things like that. So yeah, I'm a huge proponent. I never did anything prior to my 40s. And when I got into my 40s, I was doing jujitsu sometimes twice a day. And, you're getting beat up by 25-year-olds, dude, and your recovery time is so much quicker as well. It's just like when you're 18. And men's testosterone are naturally declining over the years. And I don't know if they know exactly why. It's probably lifestyle. People are sedentary, where in the past people were, slinging sledgehammers to lay railroads in the 20s, and the testosterone, levels back then. I read an article that some men were around 2000, which is considered off the chart, or pretty high, higher than what you're supposed to be doing with TRT, certainly. And I thought that was fascinating because men now that, are in their 30s, they have low T. And I'm like, hey, man, you got to change your lifestyle. It could be diet, exercise. Like you got to do all these things with it, to maximize it. But yeah, I'm a big, big, big supporter.
you said pain, right? We will put up with so much fucking pain like physical, mental pain and just pass it off as, oh, that's okay. I can and deal with it. That joke of like when you go to the doctor, oh, what's your pain level today? And you say, oh, the normal level. And they look at you and go, the normal level is 0.
Zero? I don't
Oh,
know what zero is.
wait, yeah. Well, 0 was like when I was a child. We waved bye bye to that a long time ago at concussion number 4 and some shit like that. Like my head for some reason always hurts. It's much better now, but there's just one thing I'm looking to fix. But you know, why do we put up with so long? Because I've said on the show many times, we get in our own head and we think we're alone, even though everyone is telling us that we're not alone. Everybody's going through the same shit, these same problems that we create. And my show is focused on special operations. So I get to say everyone within our community, right? It's not exclusive to our community, but that's the focus of my show. So that's where I say in here. But they all go through the same shit. And then we convince ourselves when we're home by ourselves that, oh, fuck, we can't, you can't burden other people with your problems, Nick. You can't let them know that you're hurting because what if they're hurting and you bring them down? When it fucking opposite is true. When you get together, you make each other feel better when you're like, talking about how shit you're down. Why do we talk ourselves into that hole and make it worse?
The only problem with that is with dudes that are, when it's not just being in pain, it could be mental anguish, right? Like, which is still a massive amount of pain, right? Your mental anguish that people go through as they're suffering with like clinical depression or bipolar or whatever the thing is, TBI, PTS. You just got to make sure you get the ratios right. When you're hanging out with people, I try to do 80-20. So 80%, the nicks of the world that I hang out with, they elevate and they challenge me to do better and be better. Then the 20%, that's why I started the organization, because people started calling me. I no longer give my phone number out because it got to be a problem, right? That's why I have an organization and clinical professionals that are actually psychologists be that person, but they wanted to talk with me because I got it. And if you have those ratios inversed, people, 80% people are pulling you down. It's really damn hard for you to keep progressing in life and being successful when you're surrounded by shitheads. So I just encourage people to get that better and checking on somebody, man. You're not alone, 100%. The reason I'm still sitting here today is in 2011, my first suicide attempt. That, not only did I have a plan, but I was 100% pulling the trigger. It's 10 in the morning. My buddy just died. All the things that I told you, it was like a series of unfortunate, crazy events where you're at rock bottom. Well, you have two options at rock bottom. You can't go any lower. So you can swim to the surface or you can fucking hang out. And I didn't want to hang out anymore. And my choice was to end it, right? So I put plastic up because I was a conscientious suicidal guy. I didn't want somebody to clean my fucking brain matter up because a lot of us have had to do that. And it's fucking, then you're fucking up a bunch of other people. So I literally had a gun in my hand. I'm in a 6,500 square foot house, beautiful home, awesome. I was so numb. And I've been drinking. I was on Ambien for 2 years straight, and that was fucking me up. I tried benzos, Klonopin, Xanax. I mean, name it, probably taken it. But like at that point, I literally had a pistol in my hand, and I said, "Fuck the bathroom," because I planned to, my plastic was up around the tub because I wanted to make sure I made the cleanup effort go well. And I get a knock on my door. No suicide note. I never thought once about doing that. They'll figure it out. People say when people commit suicide, they're very selfish. I'm like, that's not what they're thinking, bro. They're in so much pain. It's not that they're trying to do this to hurt anybody else. It's just they want out. There's no other option. And as soon as I had the pistol in my hand, you can't make this shit up. We've talked about it publicly the first time 2 years ago because I never knew why he showed up. So my buddy's in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I'm in South Carolina. And literally, gun in hand, alcohol, and I'm already wasted at 10 a.m. My knocks on my door, and I'm like, should I kill myself or get the fucking door? And I didn't want them to hear it. So I got the door. My buddy's there with suitcases from Tulsa, Oklahoma. He has 4 children. He's got, he runs a nonprofit for Christians, for children, called Shepherd Full Ranch out in near Tulsa. So it was perplexing to me because we went to group together, we worked in the agency together, and then he brought me into armored vehicle production where I was very successful, got my business degree and all that. So I owed him all this stuff. And he just received a phone call instead of just doing the bullshit check in. When people say buddy check in, it makes me cringe because there's two types of people. One, you're checking the block, like, yeah, I called you, but are you really listening? Are you really picking up on things that are fucking red flags, you know? Or are you too busy in life? And this dude, I was like, what are you doing here? He's like, you look like shit. And I was like, I feel like shit. He goes, get dressed. I said, where are we going? And he knows shit. He says, the bar. I'm like, I'm already drunk. He's like, well, he didn't know what to do. He wasn't trained for this. He's just my boy. So he stayed with me, and I have no idea because I was so wasted the whole time. I don't remember if he was there with me for a week or 3 or 4 days, but it was a while. And he just stayed with me, man. And for 13 years, I called on this guy, only person in my network. No one else really knew what was going on. And I'd call him at 2 in the morning or text him and say, you've been a good friend. You know what that means. Like, it's the last time I'm going to talk to you. And then he'd blow my phone up. I'd finally answer it. And I'm like, I got a gun in my hand, fucking liquor in the other, trying to get up the courage. And he talked me off the ledge for fucking 13 years, dude. And that was part of the reason I got help too, was that I felt like such an inconvenience to him, even though he's like a brother, you know how we are. And it's like, I've known him 30 years. He'd do anything for me and vice versa. But I was like, dude, I'm wearing this guy out. He has 4 kids, man, to take care of. You know, he's got a wife, he's got a business, he lives in a different state. So I need to get my fucking shit together and own it. And that's when I finally, you know, for me, I had to hit even a further rock bottom than that to make the decision to fucking do something about it. And it's unfortunate. Everybody's rock bottom is different. You know, some people you're like, that's it. Because you hear the most extraordinary fucking stories being in this line of work, and they're heartbreaking, but you're like, how are you alive? So, I mean, some of these things thought I heard it all, and every day it's something different where you're like, holy shit, that's complicated. Um, so anyway, that when you mentioned checking on people, if you're going to go ahead and do that, make sure you carve out an hour of your fucking time and be prepared for whatever comes your way, and just do the best you can. And that's a true friend, you know,
Yeah.
not just ticking a box, because that isn't going to help them or help you, you know?
Yeah, well, I think it does both. Because really, we're not, like you said, we're not trained. Like we're just, as I told you before, we started recording. Like, I don't have any fucking money like to donate to Sergeant Major Miller's family. Uh, but I do have this, and I can coordinate information. I can send hundred like messages, and I can try and get people into the know and use what I do have to hopefully make it easier on the family from behind the scenes. And that's what I'll do. And that's kind of the same with the buddy check. Like we don't nobody knows what to do because they don't know what to do when they're going through it either. They they're like, I don't know what to do. I didn't know what to do, with myself. When my friend killed himself 2 years ago. Um, Fourth of July has become it went from my favorite holiday to my least favorite in a very short amount of time. It's quite a bummer, but I don't know what to do other than stop drinking, and that has happened. So, you know, I try not to. People want to help. Like it's a selfish, selfless sort of thing.
Well,
They
that's why
want
we're
to
here
know how to
today.
do something. Yeah,
You know,
abs-
listen, like, you don't have to have money to help somebody. Like, let's start there. So, like, maybe the reason, I'm on here today is, this is going to be listened by somebody who's in a similar situation. Like, look, I don't have a lot of money. I can't pay for this guy's treatment. Well, that's why we're in the business of doing
there you
what we
go.
do. You can reach out on their behalf. All you have to do is go to bkvf.org, get help under contacts, and fill out an intake form. It'll take you 5 minutes. And that our social worker will then reach out if they're willing to. We'll reach out to them, and that you've done your part. Then the onus of responsibilities on that individual. Are they prepared to get help? And if they are, you've already done something. You might improve and save their life, and save, for every veteran suicide, it impacts 135 people in their social network. So think about that. That's so crazy. So, like, for the audience, everyone's like, well, why? If this is more of a veteran centric, podcast, obviously more people are checking in. We had roughly 78, 7,900 combat losses. And I'm not underscoring those. I always got to be clear in my intention because a lot of us new guys got KI, include myself. But in the 22 years of the global war on terror, in the same time, statistically, 120,000 veterans have taken their own lives. And that's underscored because for me, if I had committed suicide in 2011, wasn't established with the VA, I wasn't retired, I'm not in the system. And a lot of veterans that do commit suicide are those statistics. They also don't count opiate overdoses, alcohol, physical ailments from drinking or doing drugs. And they're saying that's about 22, veterans a day. But anyway, we'll just be conservative. 120,000 times 135 individuals that get impacted. It's over 2 million people annually. That's a big freaking statistic. And that's why we're here to do something about it. So with this podcast, if you know somebody, you can do something about it just by connecting with BKVF. There's a lot of great other organizations as well. We're partnered with several hundred of them right now, and we get them out to those, to the best providers, best level of care for the individual. So, you're making a good choice because otherwise, like a service animal, which is wonderful. I've got my Mal, I take them with me pretty much everywhere. Kind of keeps me distracted, which is good. But that only treats the byproduct, right? The symptoms. It doesn't address the root cause. So these tools need to be tied together. And that's kind of one of the gaps that I saw in the veteran nonprofit space and why I think our business model helps a little bit more because you just got to make that one phone call, you know? So
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like, you don't have to have the answers. You just have to have some resources in your back pocket that they have the answers. Because I said in my story the other day, it's like we don't know what to do. We feel helpless, right? And that's okay. That's what happens when you go through these things. It's just like, I don't know what to do. Well, do what you can, right? Just wait for more information, and then think, okay, can I handle this? No. Who can handle it? All right, let me direct that direction, or see if they're putting anything out. Uh, and, yeah, but it's tough. We're all at different points in our life, and we handle things differently. Like, I'm handling this situation much differently than I did 2 years ago when I fucking uh, heavily went into drinking.
yeah, let's talk about that. So that happened was that Friday of last week? You had a friend, was it a friend of yours that took his
Yeah,
own
it was
life?
my so I got hurt in April, March or April of 2015. And so when I went back to the B team, he's my team sergeant. And then, uh, when I was going through, because I was not well, and he just took care of me, And then I was kind of going through a divorce, separation, and he's like, "What are you doing, man?" And that's just not. That's like just one thing. He was just a real nice guy, great team sergeant, very smart, knew his job, knew how to take care of the guys and all this other shit. And I'm okay, but like this is equivalent to a group sergeant major committing suicide. That's what level of guy we're at,
Yeah, that
and
135 is much bigger when you're that.
we're at 10,000 from. I mean, I got 135 messages in my phone, and I'm a nobody. Like, right? So we're tens of thousands. So this is a big, a bad one for group. And I said on the show the other day, I posted a content reel. I said, hopefully next time this happens, I'll be in a better position to react and support when this happens. I didn't know it was going to happen a couple days later, but I am.
And
I'm
you can do that for the family. I know this is public and we can talk offline, obviously, but there's some things you can do for the family through us as well. So last year we started getting all these inquiries for like family members. One was an individual who was living with his girlfriend for like 5, 6 years, but they shared two children together. And he died. I can't recall if he committed suicide or not, but she reached out to us, it was after the fact. And we went ahead and helped this person get set up because in that state, our social worker figured out it was common law marriage. So she would get survivor's benefits to take care of the children. So I said, how can I say no to that? Being at the helm of this organization, even though we're target, we have so much to do with just the veterans themselves, but the families suffer, the spouse, the children, they got to put up with, could be drinking, I don't want to always throw that out there, but it's pretty common, right? Most people that commit suicide are on a substance. It's over 80%, between 80 and 90%, last I checked. But, you know, you could just write on behalf of the family, like, hey, we could reach out to a spouse to see if the kids need therapy, or to be plugged in. And I don't want to talk too much, for privacy reasons for this individual, but anyway, we'd be happy to do that. We also, I like to say, speak the name of the dead so they live forever. And because of my situation, I've always thought that I was going to die young. I'm surprised I made it to this old. I'm like, all right, cool. Borrowed time. I'm going to use it wisely. But we do memory signs at a lot of our events because I think it's important to honor the legacy of these veterans and not just be known for their suicide. They were, a parent, a father, a son. They had so much to give, right? And they gave so much, with selfless service. That's what they should be remembered by. But they can also help with a face, putting a face with a name. Even in this situation, it really drives home to the audience the importance of the work that we're doing. It's like I talk about Mike Day quite a bit. I'm going to go meet one of his teammates next month, I think, in Toronto. I'm excited about that. But he's, shot 26 times. I use him as a far extreme because then you have other guys, I tell people comparison's the thief of joy. I love to quote that because a lot of people will be like, well, you did this and I only did that. I'm like, don't play that fucking comparison game, bro. We all had our path in life. Some things worked out, like you got injured. There's things out of your control, but it's like, what did you do at that time and how you choose to leave your life? Going through that is what really defines the human spirit. And I want to show mine. I can no longer physically fight, for sport and MMA or, doing something that's like physical, because that's an easy representation of your spirit. That's why I like the fight game. Because when dudes get the shit beat out of them, the real them shows up, right? When things aren't working well. And it's like, are you going to bite down on that mouthpiece and be a fucking savage or go out on your shield? Or are you going to break? And anyway, the way we keep these guys living is you only die twice, once when you die physically, but the second time is when the last person speaks your name. So I like to honor and remember these individuals as much as I can. Our list is too long, but I like to use some of these individuals as examples because then they can help other veterans past their time. you know that's some good things can come out of a terrible situation. Maybe me speaking about one of these exceptional people, it resonates with somebody in the audience and they're like, I need to get my shit together, man. I don't want to have that impact, because that one kind of rocked me because he was doing a lot of stuff with the veteran community, wrote his memoirs, took 11 to the chest, I think, and then the rest to his extremities, and literally walked out of the room like number one guy. And he's all this, they're like, how are you alive? Number one, let's start there before I'm processing. And all that recovery and going through rehab. I've been through so many rehabs and I can identify with that, empathize with it. You did all that and then you you know, end up falling victim to this, the things that torment you, is fucking terrible. So, that's what motivates me, man. When I hear stories like even with your friend, it throws fuel on the fire, that's what motivates me to really drive harder when I get tired or I feel like shit physically because I'm dealing with, my own health, problems, being terminally
Yeah.
ill. It's kind of, you think about it once
It's
in a while, but it's a good distraction, man. I love it.
I I talked to another guy today and he's like, I'm almost numb to it. And I said, oh, I'm not, right? I'm the young guy coming in now. So I am not. So, and that's going to cycle out, guys will get to a point where they go, I've just had, I know more people I lost from suicide than I did from combat. Well, that ain't me. I'm new to this whole thing and I'm coming in the next row. And then there's somebody that's going to be inspired by me coming behind me to take my spot. And that's where we're at. And you got to keep that. You got to keep up the example. And so we go back to this. So I will debate you on comparison is the thief of joy. I think that's bullshit. I think envy and jealousy are the thief of joy. I think
Yeah,
comparison made me who I am. If I wouldn't have compared
motivate.
myself to other high performers, I definitely wouldn't have left my fucking unit in Fort Sill and been like, I want to be like that guy over there. I wouldn't have. It's when you let it consume you. There's a bell curve for everything.
Yep. Six
Statistically,
Sigma.
the majority of stuff's going to fall in there, and not comparing and comparing too much. Those are the bad. But in the middle,
Yeah, and I use it in
that's
the
where we gain.
I really apply it to getting help, right? Because
Okay.
I fell victim to it as well, where I was like, I have a friend of mine who's a double amputee that lives close to me. He can barely
That's
pick a pen,
that's imposter syndrome there. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're like, well, I don't want to take his resource. I'll let it go to him. And I did that for years. And then so when I say comparison to the thief of joy, I mean in the sense of like other people have performed at a higher level than you. Shit, man. 90% of my friends, I tell people all the time, have done way more rad shit. One of our guys on the board is in the unit. He's got turned down silver stars, like his third one, three purple hearts. He turned one of those down. Like, I'm like, who, we went through group together. Then he went on to do his thing. And he's a legend, but he's quiet professional. He doesn't have to be out here, talking about his past, living in a rear view mirror, if you will. But that's the danger with comparing yourself to get help, because there's enough resource for everybody. We want to focus that resource on people that want to make a difference for themselves and get after it. If you're not, don't come to us. Like, if you're not ready, then you're just going to waste our time and resource. Cool. And if you don't know, go for it. But like, if you know that you're not going to put the work in, it's not going to work. You're not ready. And but yeah, on the flip side of the coin, I agree with you. That's what motivates us to be better. And we look at people and be like, do I want to be an average person? Yeah, anybody can sleep till 11 o'clock on a Saturday, but what do you want to be, and what's going to be required to do it? And so if you're looking up to people in our community, when you see that long tab growing up, I was like, I want that motherfucker. I will die to get it. Not I'll just knew I wouldn't quit, That's all I knew about myself. But I'm dumb as a box of rocks at times. So
Yeah.
you know,
It astounds me
you're right.
how
There's
intelligent and smart we can all be at the same time. Uh,
Hey, that's all I knew. I was like, they gave me one word of advice. The only advice I got was like, if you don't quit, you'll have a good chance to be successful. I was like, well, I'll fucking die. Like, physically, I'll fucking run myself until I fucking redline, and like, I'm prepared to do that. But I had a lot of other catching up to do. We won't talk about land nav that kicked my ass. I'm always public about that. I got recycled for land nav.
yeah, I mean, I don't know what you mean actually because I never missed a point my whole career. And I've had actual rules in competitions changed because of me. So I don't know what you mean there, but everybody's good at something and everybody's bad at something. I'm bad at getting hit in the head. So uh,
Good
hey,
target.
all right. This is a shitty question, but you know, you're driven to always succeed, and your story, from my experience, because I talk to a lot of guys, and especially on the enlisted side, is not unique, right? Of like getting to that point of we're within seconds of checking out of the hotel. Why have you thought about this? Why did you fail to succeed so many times in checking out?
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Like, I, the only thing I can chalk it up to now, and I never was like a super, I wasn't raised indoctrinated into I stopped going to church at 6, and then I bounced around. So I never really had that foundational tenet of like good spirituality. So I've been working on that a lot lately, not because I'm terminally ill. It's just a lot of coincidences keep happening that made me really question, like, yeah, it could be chalked up to coincidence, but it happens so often, and doors get opened. And maybe it's just because I'm being me. I don't know. But I think the reason I'm still here is I think God had other plans for me to make an example of like in an impact on something, that impacted me severely. And maybe that's my calling and mission in life. I always felt like I was a protector in all the different jobs, executive protection, high risk, protection in different countries, under the most austere environments possible, and getting lucky there. I never lost a principal, but which I'm pretty proud of. I would have died for any of them, even if I didn't like them. It was part of the job. But yeah, that's my purpose. I think my purpose is here to protect other veterans from the community that I came from, and I also want to exemplify, under the circumstance of being terminally ill, I'm not benefiting financially, not at all. I actually lose money every year. Our books are open. I don't get a salary. I don't get paid to do a documentary. I just do it because it's the right thing to do. And if I could help unify communities through this effort, it's even a better byproduct, right? Like there's a lot of division in the country. And I'm like, look, if you're a pro veteran, like you want to make an impact from the community I came from, you want to get involved, fuck yeah, you're come on into the group. All the other stuff is static, all the negativity on TV. When I talk to people on the street and take a moment, everyone seems really cool with me, even though I look like a fucking criminal half the time. And they'll just start talking to me. And I'm like, the shit on the news is one representation. If it bleeds, it reads. But what I'm seeing is totally different. I feel like if I can encourage people to do something that would make their communities and their towns better, or where they came from, and they just do some, you know, giving back, the world would certainly be a better place, if you take the moment to meet people. And we serve at all branches of the military across the board. I didn't want to make this a soft centric, nonprofit, because there's a lot of resource for the community, like the Green Beret Foundation, Navy SEAL Foundation. The list is long. So I just wanted to be like, if you're in the military, whether you did one combat deployment, zero, maybe it was sexual trauma, a female, like you're in the club. Like, I'm not assessing the level of trauma that somebody went through, because everybody's different. What might not be a big deal to you, and you probably, like, in the community, you could go through the same shooting, right? And the guy on the left, you didn't pull the trigger, and you fucking smoke somebody, and they get massively impacted where you sleep like a baby. It's just weird because maybe you were better prepared for that situation, or you can deal with it, and other people they struggle with it. Um, it's like these guys, people that have survivor's guilt, they go through all this crazy shit, but losing your friend is way more. It was for me too. Is like losing one of my buddies is like the hardest thing that I've had to deal with. I'd rather take the bullet myself 100% of the time. Um, but that's just the way that I think. I know not everybody thinks the same way, but
I agree with you. And yes, the worst thing to ever happen to you is the worst thing to ever happen to you. And that applies to Taylor Swift, whether you're living in a trailer park, whether you're on a podcast talking about suicide and things. You know, just because somebody didn't go through something as horrific as you did or I did or whomever doesn't mean it didn't affect them in a profound way. It's still there. It's still some sort of trauma at some level. And I thought that shit was fake until I got hurt on a Zodiac. And then the first time I got around a Zodiac again, I started sweating and I'm like getting nervous and shit. And I went, oh, fuck, shit's real. When, I'm on dry land and it's sunny out and I like this fucking rubber filled with air. And I'm like, what the fuck's wrong with me? So that shit's real and it affects everybody, no matter how you got hurt or what you saw. It's still there. And yeah, I'm I'm narrow. I got a big fucking pond to pull people from and talk to, but it doesn't matter. Like if you're out to help people, you're out to help people, and fucking that's commendable to the nth degree. Does bum me out though. We get to what we were just talking about earlier. You're like, I don't take salary, and I'm like, I'm over here like, man, I
I'm
really need to
just
get this.
saying not to do it. I'm
I
not. I want
I'm over here. I'm over here going, man. I really need to build this up so I can support myself, so I can keep doing it. I'm like, but
oh,
this
that's
guy's
what
not
you
taking a
gotta do.
salary. God damn it.
I just say that because I made that promise. I committed to it, in I was doing a podcast when we first started, and I was like, look, I don't need the money, so I'm in a decent position where I can afford to do that. But I tell people, I'm like, our people should be paid a hell of a lot more than they are, and I'm conscious of that because I want the best and brightest to be part of our team. And unfortunately, you got to compete with other businesses outside the nonprofit space where they can command much more dollars for their expertise, their education, where they're at in life. And I want to be able to afford to pay people the prevailing wages that they should get paid. I'm a big proponent of taking care of my team first, and I just have to honor my word because that's all I got in life. I don't have time to build a better reputation anymore. Like, so with this woke nonsense that's been going on for fucking over 10 years, it's impacted everybody. Even if you're an independent thinker like me, it makes you nervous as you navigate things publicly on what you should say and shouldn't say. And quite frankly, being at the end of my life, I feel like, old people, like a lot of your parents get older, they start saying outlandish shit, or maybe it's your grandparents, for younger folks, but you know, they don't give a fuck because they're like, I don't really care what you think about my opinion, but I got one. If you're going to ask, you're going to get it. Um, but there's so much fabricated nonsense anymore. It's hard to discern. I think we're going back a little bit more in the center, where people should be able to convey their thoughts, freely, both sides, left and right. I'm a huge proponent of freedom of speech, but for a long time, certain voices were silenced, starting, especially during COVID. And, yeah, you should be allowed to critically think. I think we're lacking that in this country right now. Critical thinkers. Like, please think for yourself. Like, don't just jump on a tribe because it's a cool tribe. Like, have a thought, maybe an independent thought of yourself.
It's tough to have the way I do it is from what I've seen unique unless people are so busy. I specifically avoid listening to other people do what I'm trying to do so I don't sound like them and I can't copy them. But if you're not actively not listening to other people, what their other opinions are, you start to absorb what they think, and it will go into your thought. Well, that's great when you're having a debate one on one, but if you're listening to out of context clips and you take these little bits in, you'll start to sound like what you're watching. Where I have to come on here and I want to 100% be me. I can't get to 100%, but I can get fucking close by, like, for example, Nick Lavery, fucking the best. When people are like, who do we need to be propping up as the Green Beret influencer? I'm like, it's Nick. It's Nick.
Yeah.
Like, he's the fucking guy right now, and he's the one you need to be all looking for. But I won't listen to Nick because he's so good and he's so far above me at a different level. I'm like, I have to maintain my thoughts on things,
Well, he
like, share,
distills,
comment, all this stuff. Huh?
like he distills things down. So I saw a post the other day, and I don't really stay on. I get in, get out, and unfortunately, I have to read comments. But yeah,
Oh,
Rogan's
yeah.
like, don't read your
You
comments. I'm
got to
like,
read
well,
comments. Until you're Rogan, you got to read comments.
yeah, you got $500 million in reasons why you don't have to. Good, and I'm proud of him because he's keeping freedom of speech going. I love it. But Nick said something like the other day. It was pretty profound and he dumbs it down where it's really simple for people to kind of latch on a concept. He's like, look, man, I just want to break this down. He said something about apples or whatever the analogy was. He's like, if I say I like apples, it it doesn't mean that I don't like oranges. You know what I mean? Like, because that's people's response now. It's like they want to shit on everything, or figure out like, well, if he likes apples, he can't like, freaking bananas. And it's so funny because that's how our culture is now. Is like if I say something, you can agree with 90%, but you'll pick that one thing out and be like, well, he must be about this because he said that he doesn't like that. So anyway,
That's
it's really
100% true. But you have to. have some of that. So people like, what did he just say? Oh, and most people will investigate what you said and okay, this is what he meant. But the people that will write the nasty comments and shit all over you and say you don't know what you're talking about, those are the ones that'll get in the comments and start fighting over nothing when you probably agree in real life with what they're starting to say, trying to say.
Hey, if you got all this time to be the naysayer, look into artificial intelligence a little bit and do some research on the complexities and social implications that's going to have in the next year, let alone 10, and how it's going to totally change. Everyone's sleeping on AI, man. And I'm like, go watch Terminator from the 80s, bro. It's like it's a cautionary tale, and we're living it right now. It's so crazy, and people are like, "Do you forget about freaking Terminator? How that ends?" Like, we
I
got to be
don't
careful
think
with,
I don't
technology's
think
going
people are
fast,
sleeping on AI. I think it's moving so fast and our lives are so hand to mouth at this
but
point
it's going to be
for
like
most
COVID. It's
people.
going to sneak up on people, and then they're going to go, "Holy shit! Now it's too late." It's the genie's
Absolutely.
is in the bottle. We just got to just live your life carefully and choose what you let into it. You know what I mean? Like how
Absolutely.
much you use it.
Yeah.
I mean, I
I
love
try to
ChatGPT.
limit
I love
I
it.
try to I try
Right?
to limit my use of it as much as I can so I maintain some. But it what did Sam Altman say the other day? He said the new generation, they don't make any life decision without asking ChatGPT first.
It's kind of true.
Yeah. So whatever, man. I think it's great and it's a tool and going forward and it'll do whatever it's going to do and hopefully hopefully it doesn't eliminate what we're doing or what trying to do going forward. We still seem to be getting into conflicts and dudes are still and girls getting fucked up and needing support. And so unfortunately, if they're going to create that issue, this is going to be there as long as there's people coming back or going through these situations or torpedoing their lives and things like that because of the military. Um, it's unfortunate that it does happen, but it's not going to stop, I don't think.
Well, the way to combat it is you just got to be conscious of it, right? I don't want to talk anybody out of the lives that I've led. I would do all the same things again. I'd be a little more careful and look at your brain as a modality of no different than working out in the gym. You can be physically strong, but mentally, people sleep on that as well. They don't really understand how important it is. If you go through some crazy situations or traumatic events, deal with it as it comes, man, then get back after it. It's like sometimes you got to put the race car back in the garage, and do some maintenance. And I just think it's been grossly overlooked for years. And now that is something that we can do to combat the whole issue is better prepare people, which we do a pretty good job of. But the frequency of trauma in the veteran, community is super high. So if for the younger, demographic that are still in war fighters, I'm like, yo, you just got to spend that time working on your mental health as well. When you're losing buddies and things like that, it would be an opportune time to kind of deal with it while it's fresh, because otherwise these events will stack up and it's like a death of a thousand paper cuts. It'll catch you eventually, and everybody's desperate to try anything for rehab for their physical body. Why wouldn't you do it for your mental health? Like
Mm.
it's you're part of the machine, and arguably one of the most important assets we own, other than health, is your cognitive ability. So these are all things that men and women can do now. They might be just tuning in and hear a clip on this. It's like, dude, get after it, just like you do in the gym. If you want to have these professions where you have a higher frequency of trauma, you got to make sure you're doing everything you can to prevent issues to catch up with you, and if it does, you'll be better prepared for it. So,
That's what it is. I was talking to my wife today and I said, you know, the show is one thing. I have to, but like the base of everything I'm doing is this, right? The majority of the people that follow me do not watch 90% of my show. They watch about 10 to 15% of the show. But the clips, thousands, tens of thousands of views, right? But I can't make the clips without the show. And you can't have the authentic answers that you get unless you do a 2 or 3 hour show or whatever, and just get into a conversation where stuff comes out and we talk about things and grabbing people's attention and building on all these things. And you're right. Somebody might just see a clip and take more interest, or somebody see my clip, like throws in the comments, "Hey, look up Chris," and now we're on the show talking to one another, and hopefully that builds to other people. But it's like awareness, and then okay, people are aware I'm here. Now I have to have the answers. Like somebody messaged me the other night and about another different program. Some what do you say? It's like alternative treatments, some and down in South America. And I'm like, I need to know everything about this because people are
Yeah,
asking
like
me about it, and
psychedelics.
I got no information. So I don't I don't vouch for anybody. I go, but I can move you to the right person. Like this group of people are doing this, and you can see who you want to work with over there. Uh, it's
Well, you don't need to be the smartest man in the room, but you got to know where the library is when it comes to subject matter. It's impactful. You just got to know where the library is. Is what I tell
yeah.
everybody else. It might
I have
not.
to
It
have
doesn't.
some sort of answer. I don't have to have the answer. I have to either be able to. I'll get you to the right people, or I'll direct you the right direction, or something like that.
Well, the problem is idiocracy. Over the last 10 years, if you look at the social media platforms, they've gone from long written text or messages through Facebook. Now it's the old people shit. And then you move to Instagram, where it's more of a photo in a quick, very like a paragraph. Then we shifted to TikTok, which is like, people are just scrolling through content, getting that dopamine fix over and over again. So it's like idiocracy. We're moving backwards where people just don't want to commit the time. They just want that quick fix of like that impactful fucking thing. And which is great. But at the end of the day, when I listen to Rogan a lot, if I'm driving, I try to educate myself as much as possible with the time that I got. So if I'm on a 5 hour drive, I listen to 2 or 3 podcasts if I can. And I find the things that are engaging, and a lot of the content, man, you can't learn on a freaking 20-second clip, like you got to kind of commit to that learning curve. You're not going to learn a lot if you're just watching 2-second clips. You're going to get a good quote,
Yeah,
but
you get 3 seconds. That's the only information that Instagram gives me is, oh, people are watching this clip past the first 3 seconds, and this is the amount of people that are doing it.
gotta
Okay, so I get 3 seconds to hook you, and I see it. If I can get it, if I can get the right words and stuff there, I can get you, and it depends and things like that. But that's the game, right? As I told you, if it's the work, it's got to get to it, and you're doing. I mean, fucking yeah, I love it. I just love it. And like to be making a difference or being there for people. And that's really what it's all about. And I just love it. I love all about it. And what you guys are doing, what everybody else is doing, and whatever little piece I can play in that is, it means a lot to me. But like, I get it from both sides. Like, 16 months ago, I was a fucking disaster. And what I do, stopped drinking. That was the big one. Started working out again, getting my diet right, talking to people, and all these things. These are all fucking difficult things to do, but you have to want to do them or have to do them. And if you want to do them, you're going to be a lot more successful than being mandated to do something. And as you said before, don't come to me if you weren't going to waste my time. And that's what a lot of people feel like they're going to do is they're wasting resources that go to other people, like we said, with imposter syndrome, or they're going to waste other people's time because they know they're not committed because they just think they're going to fail again at this. And when you got to I don't know. And you said that 80-20 thing, you got to drag them up. You have to drag these people up from where they're at. And I don't know, how do we do that?
Well, I think one of the things you can do, man. One of the things I want to convey to the audience with where I'm at today, it's a little bit of wisdom, I guess. I've lived a lot of life in a very short period of time. I've been very fortunate to do a lot of cool things, travel the world. Most of the time, I was so busy, I didn't really. I had blinders up. I was singularly focused on like whether that was a business or whatever that I'm doing, but I kind of lost the forest for the trees. But one of the things that I would encourage audiences, live each day like it was your last, like you're living in my shoes. It's a very healthy way, man. If you normalize it and you think about it from a positive perspective, like what would you do if you had a very limited amount of time left on this planet? And some people might just be like, why aren't you doing your bucket list? Why aren't you flying to this, been to Australia, been to Fiji, you got to do all these things. Like I've thankfully, I front loaded my life while I was healthy to do these things. But now that I have limitations, I had and in chronic pain, it kind of limits. But what I encourage audiences, live each day like it was your last, man. Like, what would you do if you might be dead in a week? It's uncertain, but you definitely don't have like 3 or 4 more years. And for me, I really separated the wheat from the chaff. I'm like, look, I want to be really focused. I want to spend time with my wife, my family, my friends, and then work on BKVF and make it as successful as possible. That's it. Everything else is static. So like when I speak to people, I'm very conscientious of my time. If everybody led like that, like if you just got the bad news, you're stage 4 and you might, be checking out in a year, you're going to go home and you're going to spend more time with your wife and the people that matter, hopefully. And that pays dividends in your relationship and things like that, because you're going to be more present, and you don't have the blinders on anymore. So if you could leave each day like it was your last, some people, yeah, arguably will do dumb shit. They'll go out and rob a store or something because they want like something they can't afford. I don't know. But for me, it's just being singularly focused on what matters. The time that I have is extremely valuable, and everybody's time is valuable because everybody thinks that you're going to live to be 80 or 90. But what if you don't? What if you might get hit by a car next week? And I'm not saying living in this space from a negative perspective, but look at the upside of it, that it probably will never happen to you, but at least you're going to like make your feelings known to your wife, your kids, like you're going to hug them a little bit longer and be a little more present when you're done with the job at the end of the day. And that's another thing that really would benefit people. It's just this kind of your time. You're not going to be here forever, man. So do the things that matter, prioritize them, and really cut down on the noise and the distractions, the things that aren't going to be valuable to you. Um, and I'm not saying transactionally. A lot of people do things like, hey, man, I want to do your podcast because I'm going to get this. Like, if you can, the other thing is really checking your ego, which has been super hard for me because, like, to your point with comparisons, the thief of joy, that's got me to where I needed to be in life because I'm highly competitive. But I've been really trying to check my ego and do things for, I'm probably going to use the word holistic wrong, but like for true purposes. I want to spend my time doing things that truly matter. And yeah, it's been, that part's been interesting for me because sometimes it'll weigh heavily on you, but at the other times it's like I got a call last night from a veteran that I was on the phone for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and that's why I started the company. I can't do that all the time, but this person said, hey man, I can't do this anymore. Like I'm done. I was like, oh shit. So I passed that individual off on the professionals this morning, but he said, man, I prayed to God that, you know, something would happen. And like the phone, I called him right when he was on his knees, like very emotional. And the reason I share that story is like, fuck, man, that's my payment. At the end of it, he was just really thankful. He's like, I always got you guys, and I'm like, yeah, man, we got you. Just stay plugged in. This is the plan. You know, just need somebody to kind of show the way up to the surface. If you're going to swim, make sure you're going the right direction. If you're at the bottom, you got to go up. So that's the coolest thing, man. It's just the testimonials and people saying, hey, bro, if it wasn't for you, I'd be dead, and it's like, that's pretty heavy, but also super rewarding.
Do you? I feel like I owe Regiment. Like they did a lot for me, and I got to where I wanted to be, and then I wasn't able to do the thing, right? And you got out right before fucking the Nexus event, the big thing, right? 22 years of war. Now you went as a contractor and you went and did other shit, but not really in uniform. Does any of that kind of debt that you this imaginary debt too, because we just make it up. Like mine's made up. I just like I feel like I owe, and I still want to give to that organization. Do you feel like you owe some debt that you're trying to repay?
Yeah, man, really to the guys on the left and right of me, man, because like when I was contracting, I met some extraordinary people, man. I had the pleasure of working with, like, we all had different backgrounds, generally SEALs and SF. And there was some other sprinkling of other people, but we had that commonality with the brotherhood. And then you're thrown into combat with these guys, and you didn't really have time to work up like you would in an A team or a conventional military unit, where you're bonding. It's just like, here you go, meet this guy. He's going to be your partner, and you're in combat now. Go. It's like, whoa, shit. I was just in college. I had a little bit of a break for a couple, 2.5 years, but I don't know. I think the debt is just, you know, seeing I'm trying to not be so long winded on all your answers. I feel like I'm just going, but like in our community, what's really weird is if you go to a bar with somebody growing up, right, and you're like, I'm going to kill that dude or kick his ass, and you never saw somebody kick his ass, you never saw this guy ever fight anybody, right? First time, you're like, nah, and but in our community, once you've been to the most extraordinary circumstance with people and you've seen them fucking kill people for real, and you're at a bar years later with this person and he's worked up and he's like, I'm going to fucking kill that guy. Those words carry weight. And it's just interesting because that's the life we live. You're a war fighter, and I got to walk with giants, in my career. And I wish I could have done more, man. I wish it would have worked longer in hindsight a little bit, but I probably wouldn't change anything because it led me to what I'm doing today. So I'd probably do it all over again, but I don't feel like indebted. I feel indebted to a second lease on life, just joining the military and being involved with something bigger than myself, which led me to this organization, which is way bigger than myself and the team. It's a movement, based on relationships. And I don't know. I just love every bit about it, man. Like, I don't know what gets me going. I guess these people have overcome the most extreme circumstances in combat, the things that you read about or watch in movies. These individuals done that and they survived, and now they're just trying to like get through life battling themselves now. And it sounds so like obscene because it is sometimes. And it's like, man, I can't let these guys fall victim to the lifestyle or the physical, and mental trauma of war. I want to see them get better and be a turnaround story like I was, you know, and make their own documentary and stamp on life because that's what they deserve. And I don't like to say that deserve word very, it's like the word entitled to me bothers me. We're not entitled to shit. Nobody owes you anything. You got to go get it. And this country's set up with those principles and norms, man. If you want something as an immigrant to this country, you're here legally, I should say, with this administration, dicey subject. But I'm like, look at fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger, like, coming here with nothing, couldn't speak English. And then he becomes like the best bodybuilder on the planet. Then he marries a Kennedy because he was into good for him. Like he fucking accomplished a lot and became a governor and then the biggest action movie star. Didn't come here with shit. So you can get all those things out of this country. Our country is so fucking great, man. And people don't realize that. They're out there protesting because they don't even know what they're talking about. They've never left this country. They don't understand a lot of things that are happening on the ground like we do because we're there, talking to people on the ground, like what they're feeling and this and that. So yeah, I'll always feel indebted to the community, because that's where I came up as a kid, you know, and it gave me like an opportunity that I wouldn't have had. I probably would have been dead from doing dumb shit and getting arrested. I'd been in prison probably, the way I was going.
Did you feel, you said you got out right before 9/11, and then 9/11 kicks off, and you're like, well, fuck, I need to get back in. Everybody thinks we don't know how long this is going to last and everything, but how do you think about it now, like knowing everything you did? Because I talk to guys and they're like, yeah, it just is what it is. But how do you look back on that and just go, man, I did, because you don't know anything then because you're in it, you're living in history, right? And now you're looking back. What do you think about that time of like of that when you were there and how much you didn't know about what was going to happen?
Well, politically, that's a whole different. I've been asked that before about, how do you feel? Like, well, I can tell you how I felt during the withdrawal of Afghanistan. I can tell you exactly what was going through my mind. I was fucking pissed.
Mm.
Like, that just was a big fuck you to all the men and women who served this country and fucking died over there or lost
Disaster.
limbs. And dude, I mean, we had a case study from Vietnam how to not to do a withdrawal. The guns come out last. Like, that's so basic. So, but when it comes down to the military service aspect of it, I love every fucking bit of it, man. Did I question, like, I had a job to do. My job was simple. I had to keep U.S. assets abroad, in austere environments that was mostly in combat, alive in the most insane scenario possible, because we're on the road every day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, protecting a principal, going in the some of the worst parts of Afghanistan, Palestine, or Iraq. But I think the level of importance was like I had to put my life below someone else's, and it was no different than the military. Like, the guys to the left and right of me is why what really keeps you going under, like, there's always one dude, no matter if it was a firefight, an IED, or some dumb shit that happened, that would do something hilarious at that moment. And that dark sense of humor has never left me, never will. Like, you're like, are you laughing right now? Dude, this is fucked up. Like, we're fucking close to dying. And, somebody will like make the most offhanded fucking comment. And that's what I miss too, is just that, like, it really shows you what somebody's about. And that's what I loved about the experiences. It's like, there's no bullshit, like going back to the bar story. If somebody's like, hey, I'm going to go fuck these guys up, well, you get to watch. The words mean something, because you're fixing to watch some dudes get fucked up. And it just kind of lightens the situation. But yeah, I wouldn't change a thing other than, be a little more present and deal with things as they came a little bit better. But yeah, man, I try to encourage people. I'm like, hey, if you want to do cool guy shit, fucking get after it, but just don't neglect this one part of the body that's pretty important. Your freaking brain. Like, stay plugged in with that and work on it.
Yeah, it's always a sacrifice to do the cool shit. Is that why you got into the contracting? Because it's just feeling that need to go
Well,
and I don't know. Was it a was it just to contract, or was it to do the job, or was it to get back at because the farther and back in time you go towards 9/11, everybody's fired up to fucking do something.
what was an
And
opportunity to be the first, like, you know, and I'm probably misquoting this, so all you freaking history buffs, whatever. But
yes,
I
for
think
my
it's,
hundreds of listeners.
but like, I guess going back to the, when the contracting opportunity came out, one, I knew it was going to be a little bit quicker. Two, it was something that I was like, man, that has a lure to it. Working for the agency sounds really cool. I get to do the same things in the military, but with no red tape at the time. That was super awesome. Like, there was just a lot less bureaucracy because things had to get done and happen quickly. That was one of the most pleasant surprises. Like, we were borrowing and stealing literally anything that we needed to be operational. It was like McHale's Navy, and if we need belt fed, we're like, hey, our ARs and pistols are probably not the best for the situation at hand. We're dealing with people with a lot of superior firepower, so we would go out and procure our own stuff, which you're not supposed to do. We were, getting grenades and AT4s and whatever we needed to be successful, and we didn't have to answer to a lot of people at that time because the job got done. It got done safely, and that's all they cared about. And I was a little more mature at the time, so I like the fact that it was something I never done before. And you have that angst of being the first. Like, what does it feel like when the tailgate comes down? You're rolling out in your first armored vehicle. We had no weapons, no maps, like, and you have to go to your fob, to get your equipment. And I'm like, that was the most terrifying. Is, you feel like 120-degree heat hit your face for the first time, and everything's just like it's foreign, and at that point I've already traveled out of the country for years of my life, so I was a little more equipped than if I was in group. But yeah, I don't really have any regrets. I think it was all super positive, and I got to meet different groups of people. I just remember, I wish I could remember more things from a history perspective, to being involved at the time. I never took photo ops. I never, I'm like, I'm here to do a fucking job. I'll do that next time. I do have regrets on that now because you see the younger guys with helmet cams and they have all this badass footage. I'm like, damn, I would have had like some crazy fucking footage. And the history was so crazy as well. Being involved with things that made front page paper was kind of cool, and you can't, at the time, it might be 10 years later before you even bring it up, if you ever do. So,
Yeah, nobody took any pictures. When I was out with the 19th group up here in Fort McCoy, it's like, hey, let's take a fucking picture of us all. We took one civvies, and then the next day I was like, hey, everybody get your beret. And then we took pictures in beret. I was like, I got the yellow flash, so I stand out. But, um, like, you guys are going to want this. And then afterwards, like, oh man, I'm so glad you did that because they don't
do it.
do it. Because on the team, we didn't do it. Nobody did it. It was just, okay, I
Old
have to
school, man.
accomplish X and I'm just going to go do that. And then, oh, I'm at home. Man, I wish I would have taken a picture of that, and now when you're out, you don't have any pictures. I got 5 pictures. And,
Yeah,
now I have,
it's really, really sad when you lose your buddies, man. Like I've been at 2 or 3 funerals a year every year. And like, I mean, this bracelet is like, mm, couple KIA'd, but the majority have died of like cancers and ALS. We had 5 ALS deaths just out of the small group of us. And it just makes you appreciate it a little bit more. But I was like, man, I just talked to that dude and I've got like 4 photos with this guy and I work with him for, working overseas. If you did like, I don't know how many deployments total. It was like, I don't know, 13 or something. But with all that, you're working with the same dude over and over again. When they die, you're like, fuck, I wish I would have had some more photos with this guy. We were such good friends, but I have no like proof of life, like that we were friends back in the day. And yeah, just I'm a little more dialed in there now. Now I collect like unit coins. I never did any of that stuff. I just like, nah, I'm good. Now I'm like, I'll take it. Reminisce a little bit in my old ass retirement days.
yeah, lesser known operators, or Nicholas Allen, the host of Lesser Known Operators, which is me, which is my first and my middle name. Much better at marketing, and the show.
That's my
Yeah.
middle. Your middle name's Nicholas.
No, my middle name's Allen.
Okay, I thought so because I was like, dude, my middle name's Nicholas. What's up?
Um, CNC. My so better. I'm better at marketing and taking pictures and stuff. But Nick Ward, terrible, terrible at all of it, all aspects of everything. Just so bad at it. Memories, like, yeah. And you're right. One got me the other day. Uh, Sergeant Major sent me a picture of my Sergeant Major. He sent me a picture of a guy that committed suicide, and it was from Menton Ball. Uh, had to be 2017, 18, 19, somewhere in there. And right over his shoulder is my other friend that committed suicide. So I was like, got the little picture there. I was like, man, this is a fucking sad picture, but I'm so glad you sent it to me because I didn't have that and things like
Yeah,
that.
and
So
I
it's,
post mine like I used to. I'm still pretty regular about it, but I like to post like an Instagram post on the anniversaries. And some people, I heard one dude from our community was like, "Yeah, those guys that do that." I'm like, I do it for a singular purpose, man. I want to keep their fucking memories going, man, because these guys are fucking legends. And yeah, man, I kind of do a celebration of life every year. Still put shot glasses out, and the whole nine. But the list got so long that it was kind of hard to maintain, And then I was like, man, I'd be on social media every fucking day posting some shit. It's kind of dark, but I try to
yeah.
keep people's memory going, man. I love that aspect, So I'm glad you got that photo, because it's just nice to recognize somebody, man.
Yeah, it is.
Be a part of their life.
And I was thinking about this today. I don't know I'm not interested in what you think. Like, I I'm starting to find a voice to talk about it. And then I started a thought creeping in. I'm like, oh man, people don't want to hear this. They think it's like a fucking cold that they're gonna catch if we talk about. Because the problem, and you know this as well as I do, is so much fucking worse than everybody lets on. It's so much worse. And you fucking think you don't fucking know 22 a day. You don't know what that means. Like, it's so much worse than that. That's just a fucking number. Like,
Yeah, I
that
think
don't
it's
mean
more of a
shit.
shady and vague, but
Yeah, that's
whatever.
an arbitrary number that they picked out that's good for marketing or whatever. It's so much fucking worse than that. And, everybody talks about it like like if we talk about it, we're going to get sick. We're going to get a cold. Oh, we can't talk about that. I'm like, shut the fuck up. You know, like if we don't talk about it, people like aren't going to hear the resources. They're not going to hear this other shit, and there's so many people that are like this fucking close. And you got to really, you know, as fucked up as this is to say, you got to target the fucking snap decision ones, because those ones, that's it. You got very little chance, very small window of time where you got to get in somebody's mind and stop that decision. The ones that are trying to drink themselves to death, this sounds
Yeah,
fucked up, but you got years to fix that person. You know,
yeah,
or you said with
maybe.
triage, you got the acute phase. You got to get them in, get them to the person, and then try, and
Yeah,
keep that
my
hammer
own
from
cousin
falling.
just drank himself to death. Essentially, he had a GI bleed and just decided not to go to the doctor. It was in extreme pain, but he's like me, kind of a dog. He's like, fuck it,
Mm.
because he'd been struggling with. He had a massive traumatic brain injury while in the military, only 60% service connection. I paid out of pocket to get him the Warriors heart, and he quit that in 2 weeks. He was back home, and I'm like, how the hell did you get home, man? Like, and it was just sad, man, because he was such a good kid growing up. Always had my back. He was a great athlete. Played baseball at a high level, almost to the major leagues. I think he was on a farm team for a while. But anyhow, like the master sergeant retired, and when I heard he was only 60% disabled, I was like, bro, you have a traumatic brain injury. You broke your back on a jump, like blew your knees out, like jumping. You had a lot of physical injuries, but anyway, yeah, they don't count those statistics as well. He wasn't counted on the 22 a day because he drank himself to death. And, 55 years old, that sucks, sucked for the family and all that stuff. But we were able to help a little bit, take the pain away from some of the family a little bit. So yeah, I'm with you on that. It's, people need to talk about it, dude, because that's why right now there's a void of strong men in the country, and we need more men, and women too, of course. I don't mean it singularly, but
Fucking strong people.
we
So,
need strong ass people to be out there championing whatever, to get the word out and get action. And I'm not saying I'm the guy, but like being through this, myself, I was like, dude, if I think it fucking sucks balls, sorry, that probably wasn't very professional.
you're
But if
good.
if something that hit me that hard with the amount of pain that I'm capable of taking, I was like, I don't want to see another veteran go through that, and I never want to say no to another veteran. I want to be able to say yes to any kind of treatment that they're willing to do. And by the way, you tipped on a little bit, but we do traditional medicine. But when that's not effective, we also do tap into what's commonly right now is like less traditional medicine. That would be your psychedelics like 5-MeO, DMT, ibogaine therapy, and so on. Like a lot of the psychedelics, ketamine treatment, stellar ganglion block. So we're kind of affiliated with a lot of organizations that do those things outside the country as well, and it's all under doctor high degree of efficacy. We wouldn't send anybody there typically as a first starting point, but there's a lot of veterans that are like, they hear about things and are like, I'm only willing to try this. It's this or nothing. Well, maybe they're going to be a good candidate for that, to get them healed to a point where they can then go do more traditional, like cognitive behavioral therapy or whatever the modality is, to get to the answer, the root cause. So I've done a lot of things myself, like clinically, not as much, but like, with mushrooms and all the different psychedelics that are out there. I definitely dabbled in some of those. I was signed up to do the stellar ganglion block a few years ago, but I had my lung removed at the same time where I was supposed to have that procedure done. And had I known about that procedure 10, 15 years ago, I would have paid $1 million to go get that done because, it's something like 86% efficacy, generally speaking. And it's the results are instant, right? So they go into your neck. The Stella Institute is who we utilize primarily, but they do it. Your amygdala, your fear center, we get a lot of hypervigilance, so you don't know how to shut that down. And for the audience, there's a really good read called The Operator Syndrome. I recommend if you're in the military or first responder, you should definitely read that. It's pretty eye opening. But when I read that, it was like, if you're just operating under high stress conditions, right? You never pull the trigger. It doesn't matter, man. Back to the comparisons, the thief of joy. But like, if you're operating under those conditions in a super high risk environment, your fear center, your fight or flight is on all the time because it keeps you alive in combat. But when you come home, you don't know how to shut that down. And sometimes it becomes hardwired where you're under this constant, that's how I always felt, like fight or flight. And then your anger, it gets triggered really easily. Like for me, I told people I walked around about an 8 out of 10. So if somebody tailgated me, I've gotten out of my car and tried to put hands on people several fucking times for just driving too close to me aggressively, because that was something back when in the day when people drove like that, we'd end up shooting and killing them because if you have an armored vehicle, a guy's kitted up, generally it's a bad intention. You shouldn't be doing that, like rolling hard on somebody. So anyway, that fight or flight, man, gets a lot of people in trouble with the law. You start taking risks that you never normally would do. A lot of guys get DUIs, they get jammed up in court, they lose their children, they lose their jobs, and they have really nothing at the end of the day. A lot of the veteran community we're helping, I think right now we're helping about 9 people that they're unstably housed, like meaning they're basically going to be homeless after treatment. So if you can regulate these things and get on it quickly, maybe you don't lose your job, maybe you don't lose your wife, and you have custody of your children, and that's less stress on you while you're going through all this stuff. So we're trying to get the people quickly, man. And you kind of brought it up. Nobody wants to talk about it, but this is how shit gets done, man. You know, shit gets done from people using their platform like yourself to put some positivity out and be like, hey man, if you know a veteran that needs help, here's one option. There's plenty, but let's do something about it. And that's our call to action. Maybe everybody reaches out and tries to get people plugged in, and maybe we would have lost some of those people where we won't, because the infrastructure and platforms like yourself.
Yeah, and it's reaching out to somebody that you think you can trust. Because, obviously we don't know everybody, but it's somebody that you think you can trust. I use my background as a intro to get in the door with a lot of things, right? But I did it. I have to be respectful of the image I think I need to uphold, and that's how I carry myself, right? And so, like, back to Precision Wellness Group, right, that I work with. Taylor Bosley is a fucking doctor, right? He went to actual medical school, and is a doctor. He's also a Green Beret. So maybe those two things together, somebody that just would not reach out otherwise to somebody they didn't know, but just because they're a Green Beret, they'll reach out and then they'll get help. And so it's all this awareness and, saying all these things and saying these things over and over again until they sound fucking cheesy, right? Until they sound like this thing, but really repetition, right? We're supposed to be masters of the basics, and this is basic shit. Repeat stuff so many times that it's fucking second nature, and it's people hear it and then they start thinking it and believing it. And that's is that the way forward, right? We just say it so much that it's like a catchy jingle stuck in your head of all these resources and all these things to reach out to, and over and over again. And does it make a difference? I think it does, right? It does.
Well, it definitely does, man. I mean, ultimately, education is part of the process, right? So when you put a face behind the name, that's what's important too. When they see an actual person instead of reading, through a podcast and a medium like this, you can actually put a face with with an issue. And for me, I have traumatic brain injury as well. Obviously been blown up a few times, and just a lifestyle. A lot of us are prone to traumatic brain injuries, and when they're not diagnosed, for me, mine wasn't diagnosed till about 4 or 5 years ago. I knew I had one, but nobody was encouraging me like, "Hey, you should probably get your brain checked out." It's probably some. You did MMA and got knocked out, pretty regularly. Good punching bag. Um, but like, yeah, if you can get to those people first and put a face behind a name, or an issue like this, that's kind of what I'm championing is like, hey man, you know, did some crazy things. There were some implications for it, dealt with it, and now I'm moving on and helping other people, man. And if that resonates with people, they can do the same thing. We have a lot of volunteers that come into our organization that we end up bringing on part time or full time. Like our social worker, she volunteered for months. Then she's like, I want a part time job and work towards a full time. I'm like, done. And it's already happened in the last year and a half. And then we had our peer to peer specialist. We employed veterans that have been through it, and then we get him training and certification. But for him, he's a certified peer-to-peer counselor. So after clinicians are done with him, he checks in with them regularly, kind of like you're saying, like the buddy check. So we're checking in on our people, making sure they're still plugged in. If they have any issues, he can raise his hand quickly. So I think bringing people in, it's not a clinical environment too. I think a lot of us like that. It's a big boy approach. Um, and I think it resonates with a lot of veterans. They don't want to be micromanaged. They just need somebody to guide them, and they got the motivation, or maybe need a little kick, and we're here to do that. So
Clinical, right? Nobody wants to go to a fucking office and sit and talk to a fucking doctor about their
yeah,
problems
no,
that the doctor doesn't fucking understand. But they will go on a fishing trip, right? And then sit around the fire afterwards and talk about some fucked up shit that happened to them that's really bothering them. And then the other guys will start saying stuff too. And so therapy is not sitting, okay, it's not always sitting in an office, doing something you're uncomfortable with. It can be fun. You can go
yeah.
ride a horse or sailing, Valhalla Sailing Project, equine, the equine one that just
Yeah, we
just
just
started
did
up.
one. 20 veterans. We just finished an equine therapy retreat last month. I never did one myself. I really wanted to get out to that because it seems really like hippie when we're talking about it as operators, right? You're like, I don't know, like, what do you just go pet a horse?
I
Like,
grew
how's
up
that
on a
going to make
farm.
me? But for a lot of people, that has a massive impact. We're also hosting a fly fishing retreat for 20 veterans in Montana that's just filled up for October, I think. So we do a lot of those types of things. But for instance, like when you say clinical, like we just came back. I flew. There was 5 members of our team that went out there, primarily our executive director, myself, and then people from our clinical staff. They got to meet 10 veterans that they were helping virtually, and I actually got to meet them out there. And then Operation Song, one of our other partners, they pair songwriters with veterans, and they were doing a retreat out at Warriors Heart as well. But what's cool about Warriors Heart, we used, I think in the first quarter we bought 7 service animals for veterans in need that were requesting it. They were going through the program, working with their dogs, and they wanted a service animal, through them. And then there was like over 10 veterans that were finishing the course. It's 42 days long, roughly. And they were like, hey, bro, I'm not strong enough to go home. I need more help with my recovery with addictions. Like, I want to do sober living for a month. And it's like $3,500. But we approved that for over 10 veterans. And I was like, well, how am I going to say no to somebody who wants more care? They're not quite there yet. Like, I'd be remiss not to write that check. And it was hard because in 1 month we wrote over $115,000 in checks to that one institution. And I was like, dang, we're not that big. But like, I just couldn't say no when you're reading. Some of these people wrote handwritten notes, of why they're putting in the requests. And I'm like, I'm not going to say no to a veteran that wants to get the fuck after it, dude. Like, you know, uh, so that setting out there, where I was going with it was, what's really cool. It's 42 days, but they don't take your belts, your shoelaces, and treat you like you're in an insane asylum. And it's two people to a room. It's beautiful accommodation, 600 acres, 150 on staff. And Tom Spooner and Lisa and Josh Landon are the three people that founded Warriors Heart. And he's a former Delta Force operator, fucking legend, good dude. And he had a traumatic brain injury, and he brings the military aspect to that community. So only people that go there are warriors, meaning first responders or predominantly veterans. So you're surrounded by other people that are going through, they're at rock bottom, they're dealing with addictions, dealing with suicidal ideation, traumatic brain injuries. And so you don't have to say a lot for people to understand. Whereas if you went to the civilian side of the house, they're like, you don't get it. Like, you guys don't come from this space. Like, how are you going to tell me the right path when the absurdity of war was prevalent? And so that's one of our really high level partners that, and they're for profit business. They also have a nonprofit. We'll do business with either. I just want the best care afforded to veterans. But when they go through there, they can also extend on sober living for a month or two. We've done up to 3 months with some people, that weren't ready to go home. And they kind of let you pick your day. They have a canine program. They've got woodworking, metalworking shop. So you can plan those and kind of manage your own schedule, but you're mandated to go through therapy at certain times through your day. But it's kind of like, it gives you a little bit of flexibility and control in a situation where you're kind of like, you're a fish out of the water, your first time for a lot of people, or maybe 15th time for others. And that one seems to work a lot for folks. So there's so many good organizations out there. But I don't want to be affiliated with anybody who's not doing high level, good work. And we look at it from their 990s. How are they spending their money? How many cents per dollar? Like, our goal this year is about 80 cents per dollar in our fourth year going to veterans that we serve. And it's hard to do that, right? Because the first couple of years I had to invest in the software that's HIPAA compliant, build infrastructure, IT systems, hire the best, staff, get the right people on the bus, like Good to Great, put them in the right seat. The business will, flourish. So, anyway, it's been pretty extraordinary, the whole effort, to see how quickly we've grown. But there's so much work to be done, man. And the other reason to talk about this is people think the war's over, and it is. You know, I guess we were in a 15-day war. I just found out with Iran, right? I was like, was that actually a war? I thought Congress had to get involved, but whatever. Um, war is going to continue to happen, but for a lot of veterans, for that generation, for global war on terror, they're getting older and they're transitioning out of the military now, and they're getting older, which puts them at a higher risk for suicide. Because of their careers, that first level of career is ending, and they're transitioning out, and they're struggling there with all the other demons, from the profession. So that's not being talked about enough, man. This is what Fox and CNN and all the major news channels should be highlighting this once in a while, and doing a call for action to do more. And some of that's, politically, like, guys should not lose their career. If they say they have some issues with a traumatic event, they should get the care they need. And if they check out afterwards, they got to put them back in. You got to get sidelined every now and then, and about that. It fucking sucks. But these guys are motivated to get better. Like, they don't want to be on the B team, dude. You know that. Like, I feel for your position, because you put all that hard work in, you finally obtain that goal, then you're like, fuck, my body shit out, man. Like, the machine broke.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
how do I deal with this? Like, I feel for you. Hearing your story is like, I know I would have been terrible. Probably would have fucking imploded.
I was
Like, I did all this and now I'm fucked. Like, so
yeah, it was a
close.
rough time. I got my beret and I got my tab, but
Hey man, you are.
I did a lot of cool shit. I did a lot of cool shit. Like I said, I wish I had some more pictures. I wish I had more phone numbers of the people that I worked with, and a little bit more of their. I it it takes a long time to get to where I'm at though now, right? because like fine. I'm fine because, but that's a lot of fucking hard work. And I was no peach for 6 years, 6, 7 years, especially since I got out in 18, end of 18, and I stopped drinking at the beginning of 24, uh, first quarter of 24. So that's a pretty long stretch of not being happy with where you're at or where you're going. So I get it. I sympathize with people's perspective and where they've been, where they're going, and it's easy for me to say a lot of the things that I do, and I try to be very like grounded in the things I say, especially with physical. Like, I do these things that I post and stuff like that because, maybe somebody else I'll motivate somebody else to get back in the gym or get healthy or take a first step in, because you can't
I
fix
love it,
everything
dude.
all at once. You cannot
There's not
fix
enough
everything all
there.
at once. And it's like,
I
you,
was watching some of your workout shit and I'm like, hey man, like if I was still healthy, I'd be doing the same thing. It's not a look at me thing. It's like, dude, I love working out. It was my mode of therapy since I was born. Like I've always been in a sport, always competitive, always at a high level, for the most part, or challenging myself to do some dumb shit I shouldn't be doing, like powerlifting. Like when I was in my 30s with my little brother, he was playing college football. And at the time he was 13. And so I took him to powerlifting competitions and was like, I think I deadlifted around 650, natural. I gotta say that's not as impressive today with, with all the gear out there. But that was, with him, I just did it to kind of motivate him and try to keep him off steroids as a kid, in college football. And because you do anything you can and you want to keep playing, and I was like, don't get into that, man. You're too young, man, and he went on to have like a pretty successful career and paid his way through college. I was pretty proud of him. But yeah, when I was going through this, I was like, I was training for a jujitsu competition for IBJJF, like just for fun, just to keep myself. My MMA gym has always been in my camp. They came when I had my femur removed. That was part of the reason I got home in 3 days with no femur right after a bone graft. After that, before that, and they just motivated the fuck out of it. They're like, go, you got to walk up these stairs, you got to do this, and then we'll check you out. And I was like, dude, I haven't walked upstairs in like 2 months without like a cane or it was all supported. And so I got the fuck out of there. But that environment was really healthy for me, man. I was posting stuff back then or like workout. I was in my mid 40s, still had a six pack. I was like, oh, I'm going to do this shit till I'm 60, dude. But I'm still trying to inspire people in the gym now. I don't look the same way. I've had a lot of body parts removed and organs and things that are supposedly important. But my message that I'm trying to convey is like, no matter what you have going on in your life, you can still get the fuck after it. Just don't concentrate on the things you can no longer do, which is really hard for me because I identify as an athlete and I'm going to be 52 years old. I got stage 4 cancer and people were like, why do you still fucking grind if you're in pain all the time? Because I feel so good when I'm finished. And I just want to look as good as possible, as possible the older I get and beat back, your time's undefeated. I'm aware of that. But if I can motivate other young people or people with limitations to go back to the gym and try something that they can do, that's a win, man, because we need more health, like conscious people in the country because everybody's fucking overweight and and at what point do you hit your rock bottom physically where you're like, you know what, I can barely walk up the stairs in my house or go on vacation. I can't do a roller coaster anymore because I'm too fat. It's like, at what point do you feel so shitty that you're like turns to action, you know? And I'm like, don't wait to that point because then it's like so much harder. Like make today your day to get the fuck after it in the gym. Like if you can't, I can't run anymore. All right. Well, there's a fucking, I can bike, barely can do that. But you got to find out what your thing is. And for me, if you can't run, you fucking, you walk. And if you can't walk, you crawl. And that's kind of what I'm going to live till, fucking cancer gets me. I tell people I'm going to make it my little bitch until the time that it gets me. Until then, you're going to do what you're told. And, I live with that constant reminder when I wake up in the morning and I can barely get out of bed. Once I'm moving, I'm good. So you can never stop moving. Got to stay in action. Oh, you're muted.
I don't. You're in charge. You're driving the ship. You're going to make sure that you know you make it the best for you because from all these hard shit that we did, your fucking mind will give up long before your body will. You've always got more in the tank. That unless you're fucking throwing up and you're doubled over lying on the ground, you're not
That's what
at
I'm
your
saying about
limit.
fighting.
Yeah,
Like you get redlined, the real you shows up. Are you going to fold? Like when you're
yeah.
tired, dude, it's
Oh,
being tired will make a coward out of anybody. And I challenge anybody who argues with that. Go sign up at jujitsu if you've never done it, and call me after a month because you're gonna get murked by guys half your fucking size. There's a lot of it'll humble the shit out of you, and it did for me when I started back at Straight Blast Gym where I last trained. You know, I got back into jujitsu, and it was like a couple years, maybe 2 or 3 years since I rolled and man, when you're cardio, I always had badass cardio. And I was like, you feel helpless when they can murder you if they want. That's how tired you are. But that's when the real you comes out. Like there's always another gear. But the reason what's important with the things that you post, you're doing it for like to encourage other people. If you do not suffer and you go through the shit that I'm going through physically with like getting organs removed or long bones or whatever the thing is, it'll make a bitch out of you because you're not used to suffering. So I'm used to suffering because I do it every fucking day still. And I think to your point, that's what keeps your mind plugged in. It's one of the first things that goes, but you want it to be your last. Let your body go first. And then, if you're always suffering in the gym, you're going to have more resilience when you go through hard times physically by certain. Like, that's why I think it's good for people, not just aesthetics, not just health wise, but I think your mentality, if you go out there and get after it every morning to start your day, everything else is easier. It's like there's an old adage about wrestling. If you can wrestle, you can do anything. Well, it's because wrestling's fucking hard, dude. And like, I think if you can accomplish that, you're good for most other things because you know how to grind.
you when it's double overtime, sudden death, and you're in high school wrestling match, and you are exhausted, and you don't think, and then next point wins. You're both standing up. That is, man.
You've already suffered.
That just
You've done
pops
all
in
the
my
hard
head
shit,
of like,
you know,
man, I was fuck. I thought I knew what pain
wrestling.
was, and then you get to that and you're like, I don't know what else I've got. You're just so tired and you're not making, and they're yelling at you over there and they're yelling
And
over
you're
there
tuning everybody out,
and
you know.
you can't fucking hear them. And you're just like, all I got to do is just fucking, I hope I die. I just hope that this is over soon. And yeah, you're right. You're right. When you're,
But that's when the real you comes out. All that training and preparation, you got to. If I was a coach, I'd be like, bro, you grinded for months for training camp. If it's like fighting, maybe 2, 3 months, you're not seeing your wife, you're fucking cutting weight. That's way worse than the fight. So when you're in there and you have that 30 seconds left, it sure takes the pain away from that temporary pain to become a champion or just win the match. Like, are you going to fucking double down? And dig deep, or are you gonna just like roll over and let this guy fucking smash you and then be like, well, I was so tired. Like, fuck the tiredness. That's temporary. Pain's temporary. You know,
yeah,
love
it
it.
is for the most part. What is it? Yeah, quitting's the only pain you have to live with for the rest of your life.
Dude, 100%. I would never forgive myself. Like, there's been times, the first time I ever thought about quitting is when I was running. And it was I was a long distance runner, but I was undefeated in my 11th grade year in the 2 mile, right? And you had to run like 9:30 something to qualify for districts. So I go up
Woo!
to districts. Yeah, and it was fast, dude. Like these kids were running college times, like in high school. And the level of competition was so much higher. I won districts or, whatever the right under districts, I can't remember what it's called. Like, and
Conference?
hadn't been beaten. I'm like, fuck. I go out. The first mile was like in 4:30, and this was a 2 mile. So I was like, dude, that's fucking fast, dude. Like the pack started pulling away, and I was just like, I'm fucked. And I wanted to walk off the track. I've never had it happen before or since. And I was like, I just wanted to finish the race. And that's how the bitch came in. Like the inner bitch was like, you're not gonna win this. So why are you fucking doing it? And I did not like that feeling. And it made me train a lot harder and also gave me a lot of lessons of like, don't let that fucking inner bitch ever creep in your head again. And when I went to selection, I could run like a motherfucker, but I had other attributes I needed to work on. Like at the time, like I always maxed my push-ups and run, and sit-ups kind of fucked me up at times with my back. But anyway, like that whole that whole mentality stuck with me through group, that not wanting to fucking quit. I just was I always had that ingrained in my DNA not to quit. And then I think that's what separates a lot of guys like in selection. It's all mental, right? You're under a lot of stress. You're not sleeping. You're not eating. And it's like they kind of bring you down where it's like the great equalizer. And then it's like, now what do you got? You know, like that's your baseline. Everyone suffered the same amount. And God bless the little short guys in selection. There was a couple guys who were like 5'6" or something. And I'm like, some of the events were not equal with like, carrying shit. I was like, this
Fuck
guy's little.
no. If you're exceedingly tall or exceedingly short, you're gonna have a fucking rough time.
It's gonna suck.
Yeah, like especially down pilot. If you were too short or especially too short, if you couldn't match up with three other people, you couldn't
You
do
got all the
anything.
weight.
Yeah, you could. No, you couldn't do anything. You couldn't even participate if you're like overly so. But you can't do anything. You got to make the best of what you can, and work it other ways and things like that. But yeah, man, you're right. Like the mental of competition in sports, it's a house of cards, and the more you train, your every once in a while you got to break the knob off. You got to push it. You got to see how much you can take and how far you can push things. And I've been doing that every so often. I do it more in the pool because I'm scared of the water. And I do it in the pool because I can restrict my air intake and my breathing. And I believe 50-50, like 60-40 chance that lifeguard's going to be able to save me. 30% chance, there's a 10% chance that lifeguard's going to save my life. But, I rely on that they're going to come and get me. So I push it as hard as I can in there. And the more you do that, those cards in that house of cards, they get thicker. And it's easier to pull one out at the bottom and the whole thing doesn't fall out. But if you don't do that, you still got this flimsy thing that your entire setup is built on, and they start chipping away at the bottom, and you're gonna fucking collapse. And you got to train and through pain and suffering, as you said. You know, as you
If you're
should.
gonna elevate your game, no matter what your modality is, if you don't suffer, you're not gonna get better. I mean, within reason. I'm not saying go kill yourself. And like when I trained for selection, bro, it would be the things not to do to prepare for SFAS. So I was in Germany, and all I was told, like I had no resources, no internet. I just was getting garbage from people that have either maybe tried it, and they're like, the two words of wisdom was like, you're gonna ruck enough, condition your feet, make sure you're good on ruck, and don't quit. I was like, okay, that's not a lot. I can focus on those two things. And I went out and did like an 18-mile ruck with a 110-pound ruck once to my girlfriend's house. And she's like, you walked like 18 miles here? I was like, yeah. Like, that was like the beginning of my workout. And in hindsight, man, with my back being the way it is now, my back doesn't thank me for being a Neanderthal. Like, if you have a 55-pound ruck, you can ruck with 50 pounds. Like, it's getting your feet conditioned, making sure, you're not chafing in certain areas, and conditioning your legs and whatever else. Right. But you don't need to load up. Like I grew up with the 80s mentality of like watching, Rocky Four, when Sylvester Stallone's fighting the freaking Neanderthal Russian. She's like jacked and doing all this stuff, and he's in the chopping wood. And I was a chopping wood guy. Like, let me go run, 20 miles with a ruck to prepare for who knows what. But I encourage the younger gen, like, you don't need to train, like, you got to be smart so you stay healthy. That's important.
Yeah, there's ways, many ways to overdo it. I tell people, like told these kids up there, I said, simple. Keep it simple. You can go get a program where it's all written out for you. Follow the program because they've got it, these guys that have businesses, they have it figured out. Or like they're like, what would you do? I was like, back, legs, and grip. If you do those three things with along with your cardio, because if you do those back, legs, and grip, everything else will get stronger if you just focus on those because you're going to use your back and your legs and your grip the fucking most at selection outside of your cardio, which is whatever works for you wherever you're at. But that's not my bag is cardio. I'm a strength
Well, some
guy. So
people, there's two schools of thought. One, I think I grew up with this like chip on my shoulder that really helped me excel, like when it came to suffering physically. Like, I was pretty good at playing games in my mind. Like, when people would quit, right? They're just like, run, with a ruck on. It's like, well, how far are we going? Are we going 2 miles today, like yesterday, or are we doing 12? And that next day might be 12. And that alone was such a mind fuck for guys that didn't like to run because they would, sometimes it'd be a false finish at like 3 miles and you get your hopes up and then it'll like keep going. And you're like, well, how much further? Like, till we tell you to stop. And I'm like, that's another 10 fucking miles, and which we didn't know. But when people would quit, it would fuel me, man. Cause I'm like, that's one less dude. That's another one less dude. I know all I have to do is be in the top tier. They got to select somebody. So I'm like, every person that quit, I fed off of that energy is probably not positive, but it's like,
same,
I was
same way.
so happy to see him get in the truck. I'm like, all right, that's one less dude. I'm not that guy. As long as I don't get injured, I know I'm going to make it. But it's hard to prepare for that. It's hard to prepare for the unknown. And some people are born with it. And then I think you can also hone that skill through suffering in the gym. Like I said, like if you go out there and you find whatever that sport is, using sports as an analogy, and you go out there and fucking crush it and you're with a bunch of killers every day and you're just like, you're accustomed to living in that uncomfortable spot, then you're going to do just fine. You can develop and hone grit and resiliency for certain. But I think some people are born with, more of their surroundings kind of mold them into one thing. And if you want to become something else, you just have to work a little bit harder, if you're just not naturally, is resilient.
How
But
hard are you having to work to stay at the level you're at right now with everything working against you?
that's a great question, man, because like using amputees as an example, because I'm around a lot of amputees, they use generally 60% more energy just to do daily activities, right? So it's really taxing. So at the end of the day, able-bodied person, I mean, you're working 40% less than the guy next to you. And I feel like with the stuff I have going on, I live goalpost to goalpost is how I, kind of live my life. Every 3 months, I'm supposed to get checked in, my pelvis, my leg, and my lungs. And I have lung cancer right now. Like the cancer spread from my bones to most of it's on my right side. And that can grow to the size of a grapefruit in 30 days and kill you. Or because generally it's a slow grower in your long bones. It takes a long time to develop into what I had. That's why I think I got it from my time in Iraq, where a lot of other guys got sick. The timing worked out. It's not genetic. So anyway, I think I use a lot more energy than most people. It's more of a distraction for me at this point because there's no cure. It's just like you either bite down on your mouthpiece and do a surgery. Like if it starts growing in my lungs, I have one decision. Do you want to do the surgery or not? If it's not, it'll kill me. And if I do it, it's going to impact the quality of my life. So I told my wife from the beginning of this, look, I've had a tremendous amount of surgeries. Last September, they gave me 2 weeks to live. They thought I had leukemia in addition to my bone marrow because I had no white blood cells. So I was like super immune compromised, and they still don't know why. And I told them this was 2 days before my gala, and I talked to my team from the hospital. I was in for a week, and they tested me for viral and bacterial. And they're like, if it's not that, then you have leukemia. It's bloodborne because it's, where your cells are being produced. You have no platelets, red or white blood cells. I crashed on everything like overnight. And I was in the hospital 5 days, and I said, well, I'm going to my gala because this is super important to me. My wife didn't even argue, um, which was nice, but she understood if I got a cold, I would die, you know, it, it, regardless of this thing turning around, which it ended up doing. So I made that, promise. I was like, well, I'm going to the gala. I'm not wearing a fucking mask. I'm going to fucking go old school, because if you're telling me you have 2 weeks and you can't treat this disease, if I have it, basically I'm going to die in my house. I'm going to get fucking a cold at some point. I'm not going to live in my house like a prisoner and just to survive. Like, if it was short term, of course, but for the rest of my life, like, you're basically saying I'm dead in 2 weeks. And everything turned around literally a day or two before the gala. I got out and everything swung back dramatically, where I had too much white blood cells, too many red blood cells. And I knew for about 2 weeks this was happening. I got so gassed I couldn't walk 10 feet. I was like, fuck, I think it's in the cancer has probably grown. That's what I thought it was. And that was my last check. That was last September. So I'm supposed to be doing this every 3 months, but I told my wife, I'm like, look, let's do it every 6 months. I'm already overdue for that. So I'm working with oncology to do this, but it's a big distraction from what I'm doing. Obviously, I want to stay alive and stay healthy as possible, but there's not a lot of decisions to be made. I am going to try some experimental shit. I get a lot of people on Instagram sending me like, hey man, my buddy did the indigo blue or ivermectin and fenbendazole cocktail. And I was like, man, I ain't got time for fucking, I'm going to research all this shit. Like, my cancer is so rare. It's 2,000 roughly people a year get this. It's super rare. And I sounded like Trump repeating myself. It's awesome. It's the best cancer. But anyway, like, like it, again, going back to the question, like, it's just the time commitment that you have to give. Like, I try to eat very carefully. I still try to work out, keep my body going, and I'm going to try some experimental stuff. Probably in the next 2 weeks, I got to do a little bit more due diligence on the fenbendazole and ivermectin. I'm going to give it a go, but I want to first get my scans to baseline, and then I'll know whether this is impacted or not. And if it does, cool. Be grateful for the amputee who sent it to me. Good friend of mine, he mailed me $600 worth of shit. And I was like, bro, I would have bought it. He's like, you're too busy. Like, you're not going to do it. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. Um, so it's weird because obviously I'm super health conscious. I care about how I present myself and stuff like that. But it's been hard mentally when you're the physical prowess that you have, one with aging, and I'm coupled that with all the surgeries, which freaking really ages you physically. Like, the first couple surgery, I breezed through them. When my lung was removed, I walked 3 miles the next day and coughing up blood. Like, I was getting after it, but it's been harder. Like, I just had MRSA like last month. It came back. I had a tattoo cover up on my upper arm 5 months ago, and this pops up. She's like, well, once you have MRSA, you probably shouldn't get any more tattoos, which my wife was probably happy. I was going Post Malone and Jelly Roll, maybe I'll get some on my face. I don't fucking know. But yeah, anyway, it's I don't know. I don't know that I would change it though. On the other hand, even though I do spend a lot more of my time, you know, trying to book appointments and doing blood work and all the things I have to do, that's more of a distraction than the mission that I'm singularly focused on. And between spending time with people, I've been doing that. I'm like, hey, if you're one of my friends, I'm like, I've been dealing with this for 5 years. I wasn't expected. I had 20% survival to make it to last September. I beat that odd. And then my next goal, they gave me 8% survival rate when they removed my lung when I went stage 4. But when you add those together, I'm dealing with two different things. And so you're probably talking like 4% survival rate. But for how long is the question? So I'm trying to keep the combat chassis alive as long as possible right now, and doing everything I can. But, I'm not getting too crazy on it. Like, some people quit their jobs and they just like get super, and I'm into holistic medicine for sure. But I don't. I don't have time just to try to keep. I can make a bigger impact where I'm doing the things that are required at the same time that I'm getting after it with the foundation. So I'm trying to balance that. If I have to sacrifice a year of my life to do great things with the foundation, I'm totally prepared to do that. And, that's probably the way it'll go. And everybody has their own unique way to deal with challenging situations. And mine's definitely not quitting. I'll never do that. I'll be pushing to keep running the company literally until I can't. If my brain goes, then that'll be it. But it'll probably be me in a hospital bed, fucking running calls and doing this until I can no longer do it. And that's how passionate I am. And the only reason I bring it up on podcasts and when I'm engaging with our audience, I'm like, look, dude, terminally ill, but this is so important of a subject matter. I'm dedicating the rest of my life to it, man. And maybe it's only a couple years, but I want to make the biggest impact possible. That is my number one driver between my family, friends, and the business. Like that's all I'm singularly focused on. But last month I did 5 podcasts in the last 28 days, 5 events in 3 or 4 states. So it does add up. I'm not used to getting my ass kicked from just a month of grinding like that. And I felt it on this last trip. I was like, okay, I need like to take a 2-day weekend here, fucking recover and play catch up and do laundry and shit. So, but I love it, dude. I love, I wouldn't change anything because I might not be doing this and making all and saving this many lives is like well worth whatever sacrifice I got to personally make.
Fuck yeah, man. Fuck yeah. I, just hearing what you're committing to and the level you're taking it is going to push me to do more. Because, like I said, I'm new here and I'm just trying to find my way. And I just love seeing the guys that are ahead of me doing stuff, makes me want to do more. Like I said,
Within
comparison,
reason,
comparison all
like
day long. I got to do things my way. And like, see people post. I know some of these people, they'll post stuff and it's polished. And you're like, yeah, you get this version,
dogs cheap.
you
Show
know.
me,
Yeah, exactly. I'm not, but
show
I'll
me.
still take it as real and go, okay, I need to do more. Even if it's fake motivation. Like even Michael Jordan admitted to some fake scenarios when he was going for the things that he was doing, like situations that didn't happen. He made them up in his head. I do the same thing to make myself do more. I compare myself to fake versions of myself to try and get me to do more and
Whatever it
things like
takes,
that.
man.
Right.
Long as,
So,
long as
fuck.
you have balance, you're good. Like the problem is when you go all into one thing and you neglect your family, your financial situation, your fucking children, like your faith, like those verticals in life are so important. And I think what happened to me in 2011 was all those verticals were at disarray at the same time. So it was just overwhelming. We are like, fuck, I have no job, no friend, no wife. That's all happened in like the same month. And then you're like, I have all this responsibility. And there's this guy, Thompson, he was a former MMA fighter. He was molested as a child and super. I was listening to this stuff back then, and he was talking about the fear. Fear is what prevents people from moving on to aspiring to greatness, right? And he was talking about a factory, like he grew up working in this factory, and everybody was miserable because and he was like, look, man, I'm going to go pursue, I want to be a public speaker. I want to make this impact. I want to become a professional MMA fighter. And they're like, you can't do that. You can't leave the factory. You have a car payment. You have a family to take care of. You have a mortgage you have to pay. And that fear, they didn't want to see somebody else be successful. I'm the opposite. If people come to me and want business help, I try to carve out time, not for self gain. There's nothing transactional in it for me, but it sucks my time away. But if people want, they need help in something that I can help them with, I'm like, yo, I got the time. And it's not even for karma or any of that bullshit. It's just because I like helping people. And that fear of the fear of trying something new. Yeah, you might fail, dude. But Jordan also had a quote that how many shots he missed, how many game-winning shots he lost. I wish I could recite them. It was like 30,000 shots I've taken and not made a shot. I've lost 20 championship games by not hitting the last second shot. And then he's basically saying the opposite. He's like, he's that much of a perfectionist. It bothered him, even though everybody doesn't remember that shit. They just remember winning the games. Um, but his perspective is comparing himself to the best version of him, and he wasn't happy with it, and it showed because he was fucking one of the best to ever do it. So if you fail, fuck the other people, the naysayers, man. Do not ever listen to the inner bitch that tells you can't do something. You can absolutely do anything you put your mind to within reason. Like, there's always physical limitations and shit like that you can't control, but you'll find that thing. You just don't be fearful of making a move because of all the pressure that other people put on you. Make a plan to get there and execute, and you'll fucking accomplish all those things. So I kind of look at it differently, like from that perspective. I do the same thing too. And I find a good executive that has a lot more nonprofit experience. I'm not afraid with my ego to say, hey, bro, how'd you do this? Like, are you cool with sharing? Like, and 9 times out of 10, they'll take the time to mentor you, but you have to check your ego because otherwise you don't want to appear as the weak guy that needs help. But I checked that fucking part of my ego a long time ago, and it's really benefited me, I think. But it's hard to do because it keeps cropping its head up, every from time to time. You know, you're like, I'm like, look, I'm just like every other dude. I just kind of work a little bit harder in certain areas, than other people have to probably.
So, how do you approach every day? We'll wrap up here quick here. I just want to like, what is because you down, you're fighting odds, right? So, what is after you will yourself out of bed? Like, what is the goal every day mentally? Because you're never gonna accomplish everything you want to do. I'm never gonna accomplish everything I want to do. We're not gonna fucking get there, right? But what is mentally the goal every day going forward?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing after my wife puts her foot in her back and kicks my ass out of bed and I start moving, the first thing I do is I try to have a moment of gratitude for the things that are going well in my life. I try to sit every morning with the thinking of just being grateful for what I still have left. Like that could be time. It could be like, yeah, man, I have to sit down to put my fucking shoes on, and I'm always in constant pain. But I kind of put that aside and just, be like, man, I'm super grateful. Like my pain level is not as bad as it should be. All the things that I have, and really anchor my day in being grateful, to start. And then I focus on, I work off a list because my brain's been rocked so many times. My memory's not what it was. So I really prioritize with the top 10 things I need to get done for the day, and everything else, anything above and beyond that is icing on the cake. But I really like the routine aspect of it. If you have some gratitude, it certainly starts your day off. I also like to work out. It's been like a week or so, which is, not good for me. So I plan to get back in the gym, this afternoon. And like, that's part of my routine is to work out. That kind of calms me down through the day too, because I feel guilty if I don't work out. It's weird. I have some body dysmorphia shit, who doesn't? Everybody that works out has it, that's a comparison thing. I'm like, dude, how do I get stronger? I'm getting older, beat up. So anyway, just setting your day with gratitude, uh, getting a workout and being routine based where you're trying to accomplish a set number of goals in the day. And then once they're done, then I shift focus to my wife, my family. I try to be present after work. I don't work like I used to because I'm a workaholic. So I try to measure that now and spend more time with my wife. She's finishing her master's degree for nursing right now, runs a med spa, and it's been going on for 10 years, or sorry, 2 years. and she's almost finished. She'll be done next month. And that's why I said, look, let's go on a vacation together. And it's counterintuitive for me because I'm such a workaholic. I got to make that a priority and be like, let's go on a vacation together. It's been freaking a year and a half. Like, you know, just spend some time with her. And, also in between, I'm trying to see my friends, while I can, I don't have a huge group of friends. Like my inner circle is very small, but I like to spend time with them and some of my family. I go get back home. So anyway, yeah, that's how I start my day. I think gratitude is really healthy for people just to think of the things they're grateful for, man. I get grateful over having fucking air conditioning still. And it's been years since you know what I mean? Like I just came back from a ski a shooting event last Saturday. We had a golf fundraiser Monday in Nashville. It was hot as hell, dude. I'm just sweat. I changed my shirt 3 times one day, and not from anxiety, thankfully, but I came home and I'm like, dude, it's cold in here. It's like 72. It's like compared to, 98. And I'm like, dude, and then like even the simple things of having running water, because when you go without things, man, it makes you appreciative as hell. You know what I mean? Like when we're overseas, it's like fucking a lot of places didn't have running water, drinking bottled water, brushing your teeth with bottled water for fucking years. And I'm like, I just turn this bitch on and I feel guilty leaving it on sometimes. I'll walk away from the sink. I'm like, oh, I'm wasting water. So, I don't know. I think going without things really keep things in perspective too of how grateful you should be. We're super privileged in this country, to have the things we have that we don't think anything about, like power, air conditioning, and water and food. It's like the
Yeah,
essentials,
until it's not
you
there,
know.
you just kind of take it for granted. Unfortunately.
Kids have anxiety today because they didn't get their Porsche for their 16th birthday. I'm like, that anxiety, you can go pound sand. Like, you don't know what anxiety is, kid. Like, wait until you get older and you have to compete in the real world. Um,
Yeah.
you know, I think the generation coming up, man, is a little scary to me. I feel very disconnected from, technology's been it's coming at us faster than we can process information, like just information. You don't know if anything's real. Now AI is coming out and like even photos, you're like, is this? I just saw a dog doing a backflip off of a high dive yesterday. And I was like, is that real? Like, it looks real as fuck. Like, why
Yeah.
have I not heard about these, you know, dogs that do high jumping?
There's no way to we're almost to a level where you can't discern what is real and what is not. So, but we'll see where things go with that. I try to not worry about it because there's nothing I
You
can
can't
do
control
about
it.
it. I can't could do
Nah,
anything about it.
don't worry about anything you can't control, man. Like people get too sucked into the CNN of 1991 when the first Gulf War was going or whatever. That's when the the news channels, if you want to call them that, they just suck people in with drama. And from that time period forward, it changed how everything was done. And now we're living in that, like just getting berated with this terrible shit. We're not, we came from small villages and tribes historically, right? 10,000 years ago, hunter gatherers. You weren't worried about what was happening with 8 billion people across the planet. So there's going to be fucking horrific things. There always has been, but we're thrown that information like as soon as you wake up. It's like, you know, what's the latest war? It's never positive.
And that's
Very
what I'm
rarely.
trying to do, and it sounds like you are doing, like positive. There's so little of a positive I don't want to say message, just like positive movement towards collectively being better or collectively being happier. And that's what I'm trying to do. It sounds like that's what you're trying to do, and some other people are, and other foundations, and just not for themselves. Well, it's that selfish, selfless, two sides of the coin thing, right? You know, make helping other people makes me feel better. It makes them get better, and hopefully, hopefully we can all work together towards the same goal for as long as we can. Um, I'm just fucking excited to see where it goes, and I'm excited that I've met you, and then Now, I'm another resource that you know, you're another resource that I know, and hopefully, we don't know what's going to happen, right? We don't know what's going to happen the next tomorrow or the next 3 months, 6 months. We could be doing an event together, or we could be sending each other people to talk to, or for help, or for come on the show, or whatever. So I'm just very honored and thrilled to see where things go, and just try and
Yeah,
be
maybe
that
we can do it
positive.
again, like when the documentary comes out. We've been working on it for since August of last year. My buddy, who's a SEAL, he did this film. He's like, "Hey, man, I want to do a documentary on you." I talked about it about 2, 3 years, actually about 5 years ago. Before I started the company, I was going to do a documentary to raise awareness, destigmatize veterans' mental health. But then I figured out how much money it was going to cost, and I was like, "Well, I could start an organization that can help one there's tangible results so I can actually interact if I want with the veteran that we helped. And that's really, really cool. Um, so I put that on hold and then my buddy hit me up out of the blue and he's like, can you come to Huntsville, and film in the studio? It's going to be like 10 hours over 12 hours over 2 days. I was like, sure. And it was terrible. I did not want to be there. But he pitched it to somebody in Hollywood. They picked it up and now they're pitching it. Last week they pitched it to Netflix on Thursday. The week prior it was Hulu. They both seem fairly interested. So if that, I'm not counting on anything until it's done. But what I wanted to do last September when they gave me 2 weeks, I was like, man, I wish I would have done this documentary because I could help our organization and the movement beyond the grave. And then when it became real, like 2 weeks ago, they're like, "Hey, we're pitching Hulu and Netflix next week," and I was like, "Oh fuck, I might be the dog that caught the bus." And I have to keep going back to last September mentally to really stay plugged in because part of me doesn't want to do it because it's really personal, like talking about the darkest shit that you've ever been through for a documentary. I'm like, "Oh, that sounds really engaging. Let me tune into that." But it could be an easy button for like some of the bigger platforms, like getting on, it could be like Sean Ryan or, Rogan down the road. If you have that easy button, it sure makes it interesting. It's like, all right, Green Beret, CIA dealt with a bunch of, addictions and like ideation for so long, then cancer, and then this. So, and then the foundation. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster, but that would be a cool one as a follow up because there'll be a lot to talk about, obviously. But I want to make that as successful as possible, simply because our brand image and likeness for what a shit situation turned into something really beautiful at the end of the day. And I'm not doing this. People are like, "Oh, it's for legacy." I'm like, I'm not doing any of this for fucking legacy, man. Like, if anything, it's like I got to practice what I preach and be uncomfortable because I tell veterans to do it every day and I got to lead by example. So that's why I'm doing this thing. But hopefully it'll come out in the first quarter, of next year. And so I'll keep you tuned in for that because if I can get a copy to people like in advance, I just think it would be pretty interesting to talk a little bit about some of the detail behind what made me batshit crazy because I'm not even sure to this day, but
Fuck yeah, man.
it,
We have
it
something
helps paint
something
the picture.
to make some notes on and talk about and shit like that. I'd love to. Yeah, I even wrote down a name here of a guy I want to introduce you to after we stop recording here, so don't let me forget that. But I feel like that's a good spot, man. I got 5 questions that I ask everybody, and then I'll cut you loose. How's that sound?
Good.
Fuck
Just
yeah.
go.
All right, man. What is your response to thank you for your service?
Dude, you said this earlier, and I was actually thinking how cringy. Um, Gosh, I don't want to put people off against it, but at the same time, it's almost cliche now. Like, I still don't know how to respond to that. I'm like, it was the best time of my life, dude. Like, I don't have any regrets whatsoever, and I do it all again. So I'm like, I don't need you to selfless service for a reason, right? But I think after the first Gulf War, everybody was believing what they said, and then after 9/11, a couple years after, when people got tired of seeing things about war, I felt like it turned cliche almost. Like people were expected. Well, I don't know what to say to this guy, so let me go with that. So I'm kind of like torn between the two. I mean, I appreciate it. I think I hope the respect in people that wear the uniform continue to do good things and represent what it stands for. a little bit better. There's always a bad apple in the bunch, and that gets a lot of news, but only the poor go to war. I mean, for the most part. I think there's a song by System of a Down about it, but it's true. A lot of people, it's like a new chapter of their life. They're moving out of a rural area or the inner city, and it gives them an opportunity to get education and all the things. Everybody joins for different reasons, but I'm still appreciative when people say it, but I don't need it to be said to me. You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather them just be more authentic and ask questions if they're curious or something like that.
What is the one characteristic that sets operators apart from the conventional forces?
I think critical thinking skills for sure. You know, um, that's probably up there on the list. You got to be a critical thinker, and you got to deal with the situation with the limited amount of resources that you have, which usually requires you to think outside the box. And I think that's why a lot of operators, a good bit of them, are successful as entrepreneurs because they have the grit, resiliency, the critical thinking skills. They just need a little more education in certain areas to make them successful. And they usually find a way. They might fail a few times, but they won't give up on the pursuit, you know, generally. But yeah, that's a tough one. Besides those things, I mean, I don't know. The community is just different. I can meet dudes off the street and we have a lot in common. You have like an instant bond with certain people. Generally you always have the crazy left and right, to deal with. But the bell shaped curves that you research, mentioned earlier, most people are in the same group. They know how to suffer. And for me, when I'm looking for candidates, it really separates the wheat from the chaff. With they're going to be dedicated, and long as you have good leadership, they tend to flourish. But there's also a downside. I'll be like, they probably drink a lot. Speaking from personal experience, I was a professional.
Yeah.
Um,
That is one of
so,
the unfortunate things. Is very good at consuming alcoholic beverages. What is the one moment of your career that you wish you could go back and relive or redo and it would not change where you are now?
well, there's some moral injuries that I did to myself back when I was jacked up, and I wish I would have got help quicker. That's for sure. Because the amount, who knows what I could have been had I not wasted and squandered my time worried about keeping my job and things. And I quickly found out none of that shit means anything. Like, I don't care about how big a house or what kind of car I drive. Like, I'm free of that. So that was like a lot of freedom. But as far as like a specific event that I could go back, I don't think I would change anything because it would change the outcome of where I'm at
It
today.
won't change where
You know,
we're talking about an insert and just redo it a different way. It won't, you'll still be sitting here with me in this interview and still at the same point. Um,
so combat related.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't some guys pick out some wild shit? A few guys went back with I would have stopped drinking at this point or something like that. But I like would have got treatment earlier because you'd still be at this point.
I mean, that's pretty much it, but again, it's hard for me to realize it without changing the outcome. The reason I would want to go back and change something is what I'd want a different outcome on the other side. So if there's not that, I guess I wouldn't change anything. You know what I mean? So it's kind of one of those
No,
paradoxes.
I know what you mean there. And a quick tangent there. Become who I. You never know who you could have become. I got the quote on my Instagram bio. It says it's never too late to become who you were meant to be or something like that. I fucked it up.
Yeah, it
And
could be
it's
the
on my
man.
fucking Instagram and I fucked it up. But I feel like, you are doing that. And it's very inspirational to me because it's not fucking too late. As long as you've got any time left, it's never too late to become who you wanted to be. So,
And if you had a week to live, it's never too fucking late, dude. You can always try. Say you were a shitty father, you never were present, and you got a week. That's maybe something that they remember forever. So I don't think it's ever too late to to try to enact change, man. I tell people to get after it every day. Live like it's the last day of your life, and be the turnaround story that you'd want to become. You know, if people are rock bottom, man, there are stories that people latch onto because it's pretty remarkable what the human condition can do if you put some effort to it. You know, and you can live your life like a shitbag, be homeless and be on heroin and fucking robbing people and doing all the wrong things, and then if you find your path, man, what a success story that becomes, right? You're like, dude, I went from here to polar opposite. And now I'm doing great fucking things. And you know, you only get one shot at life farm. All I know from spiritually is you're born and you die. What you do in the middle is what's important. So focus on that shit in the middle. You can't control the other two things. Like, you know, you only got one life, so live it like it is, man. And like, if you're not happy with your situation, fucking change it. Make those goals, prioritize it, fucking execute, and become that person who you really wanted to be, you know, growing up or even today. I love that.
What is the best piece of advice that you've received during your career?
Piece of advice. Well, I always like to quote, well, two things, like quote wise. You know, I don't know if somebody actually told me these things, but things that resonated with me with business. One was H.W. Marriott, and he was from the Marriott family hotel chains. You know, very successful guy. He said, "Take care of your people will take care of your customers, and your business will flourish." I've enacted that in the last three businesses that I ran, but most successfully with this organization that I'm running now. And everything's people based. I want to hire the best people that are like minded in the sense of like passion for the veteran community, and I know that they're going to treat the veterans that we care for with the utmost respect and dignity and, you know, care that they can do. And we're all people. But that one, and then the good, the great analogy that I led earlier, I've told Sarah, our executive director, this till I was blue in the face. I was like, if you haven't read Good to Great, I'll save you the cliff notes. Is like put the right people on the bus, put them in the right seat, and the business will, you know, will flourish. So those two things are all about people, you know. And if you're building an organization, a brand, a company, no matter what space you're in, if you take care of your people and you hire well, that's the culture that it'll become, you know. And I don't cut corners when it comes to people. Like I'm really heavily focused on making sure that, you know, we hire the best and brightest and everybody's in it for the same reason, but we act like a family, you know. And it's been one of the most pleasant atmospheres I've ever worked in. You know, everyone's super caring, almost to the point where you're like, bleh. Yeah, they send me birthday cards. I'm like, I forgot it was my birthday. Like, shit. And, you know, I don't know. It's just investing in people is probably one of the best things that I've learned over my career was, and it started with the teams. You know, you never want to be the weak link. And if you are, you need to work on those skills and never be the weak link, you know? Um, so that's the goal.
All right, last one, man. What were you afraid of then, and what are you afraid of now?
Well, back in the day, I didn't feel like I was afraid of anything. What I'm afraid of now is me going back and doing the same career that I used to do. I don't think that I could do it today that I could back then. I think I would think too much, get myself in trouble. You got to kind of just say, fuck living or dying and just flip that switch. And, you know, that's how I led my life through combat. You know, like I got hit by an IED the next time I went out. So they're like, hey, it's super dangerous. Like, you know, so and so, meaning me, just got blown up. They're like, does that somebody want to go drive down, you know, Route Irish or Khadijah Expressway, you know, it's shut down right now. There's so many IEDs. I was like, oh, I'll do it. Get hit on, you know, the next time out. I don't think I could do that today because I know all the consequences, but, and I knew the consequences there then, but the mission always came first and my mission's different now. So, um, yeah, I don't, it's kind of tough. Nothing really back in the day. I just kind of, I couldn't think about it because you saw so much chaos around you every day that if you think about that, it's time to retire, you know? And now I'm in my retirement years. I think I'm past that point. So I don't know if I really answered the question, but Yeah, I just think back, like, could I do the same, job and skill set today that I did back then with what I know now? And I'm like, probably not effectively or not as effective. I'd like to think that I'd be better, but I don't know.
I like to think that I can go back and smash selection and go back to a team. Probably not the case, but I like to think I can. I'd like to think I can pass dive school on Monday too. So, probably not the case as well. Chris, how can everybody
Yeah.
find you on the socials if they so choose?
Yeah. So on Instagram, it's Chris_Cathers. Pretty simple. Not very many of us out there. And we've been kind of working on socials, being a little more active. I've been forced into that. So people can follow me there. Follow bkvf.org on Instagram. We're on Facebook. Pretty much all the platforms. You can just go to bkvf.org. Our website is bkvf.org. So people need help, they can go to contact, get help. You fill out the form. Our social worker reaches out within probably about 2 hours or so. So that's how people can get help. And if you want to get involved, you can see all our events on our webpage. The next big one for anybody in your audience is interested, we're having our gala. I think it's September 13th is a Saturday in Nashville at the City Winery, 4th year. And what's cool about it is we get to emotionally connect with our audience, but it's a black tie event, but I don't care what people wear. I tell people I'm not the fashion police. Look at this guy. So that's really one of our biggest events coming up. We're just wrapping up 2 smaller events in Nashville. And then we've got the Marine Corps Marathon. So if there's any marathon runners, they want to participate in the Marine Corps Marathon, yeah, have fun with that. I'm a cripple, so I'll be watching from the sidelines. My running days are over, but that's in October. We're looking for some more runners. If anybody in the audience knows any marathon runners, tell them to sign up. You can do it all through our website, bkvf.org. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, man. Well, it was an honor to have you on the show. I appreciate you coming on. I know you've been on some big shows, and to come on my little show and have a good conversation with a former team guy, I really appreciate it.
Hey, happy to do it.
You got anything for me, man?
No, man, just appreciate the opportunity, man, getting the word out there. You know, I just want to as many platforms as we can get on, man. Appreciate the time. At least it sheds a little bit of light on the subject matter. And I'm sorry about your recent loss. That's more reason to do this thing. I wish we would have met earlier and I could have done something about it. That's why I got a fire under my ass. So I want to prevent those losses that you just went through as well, and all the friends and family. So yeah, that's why we're doing what we're doing. But I appreciate you having taking the time to get the word out on something that's really super important to me and a lot of us in the community.
Yeah, it's that's the gig, I think, and that's what I want to do. And we're all going to do it until we don't do it anymore. So,
And there'll be someone to take our
and
place.
then, like I
That's
said, I'm coming behind you, and there's somebody coming behind me. It's just like the team is, and do it as long as we can, and hopefully have a good impact, a positive impact. And as I said, man, it was an honor having you on. I appreciate you. Bye, everybody.